Hillary. Now the globalist Wall Street bankers who financed Hillary's campaigns are funding Haley's campaign.
If you're a very liberal Democrat, I urge you, help Nikki Haley too.
And just like Hillary Clinton, Nikki Haley shouldn't be president. Alt-right Inc. is responsible for the content of this ad.
Every detail counts. That's why I live my life with Lexi B2 hearing aids powered by Bose. When I began experiencing hearing loss, I knew I needed the best of the best. Lexi B2
everyone.
hearing aids powered by Bose are app-controlled and self-fitting, which means I can tune and customize them to my needs and preferences on the Lexia and enjoy high-quality hearing. Take the lead and call or order
Chris
online
Christie,
at lexihearing.com
Ron DeSantis,
to receive your
Nikki Haley, and
Lexi
Vivek
B2
Ramaswamy.
hearing aids powered by Bose today.
This is holiday gifting happiness. Because going back in time, this special gift tray was full of fresh festive favorites from nuts.com. Delicious nuts, dried fruits, sweets, and other treats, freshly prepared in our kitchens and delivered in a flash to satisfy every craving. Create your own gift tray or choose from our delightful gift baskets and tins, including the box of Winter Wonderland. Nuts.com, every flavor of happy. Enjoy 20% off, plus free shipping with your first order.
They've been playing some very pretty music here on the quad at the University of Alabama at Tuscaloosa, but we're going to hear our favorite song of all. The national anthem is going to be any moment now. What a great night for one of the students, Reese Hunter, a junior here at the U of A, is going to be singing the national anthem and doing it a cappella. And I happen to have a daughter who sings, and I know how difficult that is to do. So we all look forward to that big moment, which is going to get us into the mood for who wants to make the best case for this country. We have former Governor Mark Sanford, Republican strategist Scotty Nell Hughes, former Governor Larry Hogan, journalist Lindsey Granger. So as soon as we hear that the anthem is getting ready, we'll go to it, of course, take it in full, as we should. I keep saying, Gov, that we're going to give you politics at News Nation the way it's supposed to be. And by that, I mean that you do in disagreement with decency. You're trying to remember that it's about the people and not just the simple horse race. But what is the reality for the people on the stage tonight in terms of whom do they need to impress most?
Well, it's a really good question. Look, you're trying to impress the people of the country that are watching and tuning in tonight, but there's a big focus on Iowa for DeSantis and Haley. They're trying to impress those Iowa voters. Christie's trying to impress the people in New Hampshire. But it's a fine line they've got to walk because they want to come across as civil. They want to talk about some positive things that they want to espouse about what they're going to do if they were the nominee or they were president. But they also have got to score some points because it's now or never. If they don't get ahead, you don't convince people why you're better than the other guy. Then nothing's going to change.
Well, look, it's a comparison, right? Any way you look at it. Lindsey, I'll stay on this side with you. The Alabama Honor Guard is here. As soon as I see that Reese Hunter, the junior at the U of A, is going to sing the national anthem, I'll go right to it.
Well,
to take us there, Lindsey,
well,
who are you going to be watching first tonight?
I think everybody's watching Nikki Haley, but I think it's really important to know the goal for all the candidates on stage. They have to really care about really chipping away at Trump's lead. He's leading so far ahead of them that they have to make an impact tonight. And I'm talking about moving the needle to enough to a point where they're having a new discussion that they're in double digits in the 20s. And we're seeing that leading into Iowa and after Christmas break, that there's a clear front runner. And that's really between DeSantis and Haley. And I think without that, we're going to see that we never see some of these people
here we are
again.
The University of Alabama junior Reese Hunter singing the national anthem.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was
Not too bad.
Well
I've
done,
heard worse.
Reese Hunter Jr. at the University of Alabama. Probably the toughest performance of the night. A very hard song to sing well, and she did it a cappella. Good for her. Now,
I'm honestly astonished that Chris Christie made the debate stage.
Because they're so
The
anxious
RNC had to really stretch to get him on there.
For a photo op, they're going to do that, and they're going to reset, and the debate will start as planned. Here are the moderators there that we have from all of the three different things. Of course, we've got News Nation's Elizabeth Vargas there leading the way. We have SiriusXM's Megyn Kelly, and we have Eliana Johnson from the Washington Free Beacon. All three are there. All will be asking questions, of course. It's a very proud night for us here at News Nation. First time we've ever had a debate. First time they've ever had a debate here in Alabama. And again, can't say it enough. This is the last chance.
You can tell Megyn Kelly's had some plastic surgery since she left Fox News.
Before the holy days, when they'll be dealing not with just their family, but all of our families and the donors and the constituents and the Iowans that they need to believe in them. This is the moment. Either they make it or they don't. So, Scotty, let's talk about a little TV here for a second. Three moderators, all women. What does that add to the mix about what the candidates have to deal with?
Well, make no mistake, it's incredibly smart for the Republican and for the RNC to choose an all-female panel right now.
It makes no difference.
Remember,
How
this is
stupid.
the party that put women in binders not too long ago.
Stop worrying about
And now
identity
we're going to put an
politics. That's what the left does. Nobody
all-female
gives a
panel
crap
to question
about that.
possibly the candidates for the next president of the United States. So this actually, yes, I'm going to scream feminism, girl power. That's exactly what it is, to show that the feminism and the women's issues are not just owned by the Democratic Party, that conservatives and Republican women are just as strong and just as fierce. They can moderate a debate.
Oh, of course. Gov, how big a deal
Oh,
is
here
the
we go.
moderator when you're up there?
Unless they're
Boo.
playing
Get off the stage, you warmonger.
40-yard line, I would say not that
Whopper
much.
hole.
Because the real debate, again, is who are you talking to out there in the public, and are you resonating with that voter? And again, are you contrasting and saying, I'm ultimately better than Scotty is, or Scotty's better than I am in making your case? It's not, I would argue, not enough to say, this is what I believe. This is what I believe, and this is why I can get the job done better than Scotty.
And again, the candidates are out there. They're just doing a set for some photos, some TV business. They're going to go back behind the stage, and they'll come out and reset at the top of the hour when the debate actually begins. Now, former President Trump learned a lesson the hard way about tussling with a moderator. When he had his exchange with Megyn Kelly, it wound up helping her. You can like the reasons why or not, but did not help him, which is one of the only things we saw really stick on him. What's the lesson?
Well, I don't think you're going to see any of these candidates make the same mistake, that's for sure. But that was a big night for Megyn Kelly and a bad night for Donald Trump. I would disagree a little bit with the Gov. I think the moderators really do make a difference. I think it's a big deal that we have these three powerful women up there. I think it's a big night for them, for the candidates, and for News Nation. I think this is really a great night.
Yeah, Lindsay, for us, this has always been the mission, to kind of get in the game and be able to help people make the choices for themselves. Media's got a tough task with this also. It's very hard to keep this election focused on where the country is right now in terms of how we get it to a better place. What will people be looking for tonight?
I think there's specifically so much news going on. Even if we talk about the moderators, they are women. There's news surrounding women. There has been since the last election. And I think that it's so important that for Nikki Haley, let's say, you capitalize on the fact that there are three women up there and then push your agenda. For DeSantis, you capitalize on that situation and explain what you're planning on doing. And same thing for Chris Christie and Ramaswamy. But I think it's very important that we look at all the issues happening. We're in the middle of two wars that we are closely aligned with. People want to know where the money is coming from. And especially as people in part of the conservative party, that's a big issue. How are we paying for these things? We see that the Senate is currently in a standstill regarding this exact issue. So even though foreign policy is not that big of a deal, we know we have foreign policy experts on the stage, right? So what are you going to speak to that, and how are you going to speak to that? And then I think the most important thing that I'll keep really going is the economy. People really want to know how
he's just so awkward. But I like DeSantis.
This year has not been great financially for a lot of people.
I've always had, you're not going to hear journalists say this, but I've always wanted to see a debate with no moderators. I think you have a great panel of them.
It's called WWE. Yeah, that would be crazy.
But I'll tell you why. I think you'd learn a lot more about the men and women because you'd get to judge the things about, well, how, oh, wow,
yuck,
he was really interrupting her. Did you see him step in front that way? That was really rude. I think it would be an interesting measure. But of course, that won't happen, and probably for good reason. But I also think that it reminds people, Scotty, of what you want to focus on in terms of they have to spray a lot of issues. And that means that you have a lot of opportunities in short segments to say things. To your earlier point, in case the audience didn't catch it, how important is it that these men and this woman know, here's what I'm going to say when this comes up. I'm not going to be distracted.
Well, it's extremely challenging, and let me just point this out. What these candidates have to do is they have to not look like they're the
that whole Bootgate thing was pretty embarrassing. But honestly, DeSantis is a good guy. I think he's done some good things in Florida. I think he's a good candidate, down the road, even though things aren't really working out for him this time.
Got his game face on. Last word to you, Gov.
Yeah, again, how many times do you remember the moderator? I mean, it's at the edge of the playing field, and unless they interrupt inside the 40 and the 40, at that point, you remember the candidates and what they said.
Gotcha. All right, everybody, thank you very much. Very exciting. The fourth and final Republican presidential debate. DeSantis, Haley, Ramaswamy, and Christie. Stay with us.
We're about 3 minutes out, people. I'm going to turn this down so I can talk.
The easiest way to get into America is through the southern border. We don't need to wait for another 9/11.
Nikki Haley, strength again for America.
We have to secure the border. Instead of catch and release, let's go to catch and deport. We need to make sure we put 25,000 more Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job.
Nikki Haley, she'll close the border before it's too late.
America needs to wake up.
SFA Fund Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertisement.
In these critical times, our country deserves a president who's more than empty.
We're actually going to watch these ads.
We need a leader who will tell it like it is.
I haven't seen these.
And tackle our challenges head on. That leader is Ron DeSantis. He knows the sacrifices of war and the miracle of a beating heart. Ron's vision is clear: fighting for our future, not rehashing the past. That's why I wholeheartedly endorse him for president.
Never Back Down is responsible for the content of this ad.
Nikki Haley admits.
The reason I got into politics was because of Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton is actually the reason.
So Haley raised taxes like Hillary, backs open borders like Hillary, did favors for Chinese companies like Hillary. Now the globalist Wall Street bankers who financed Hillary's campaigns are funding Haley's campaign.
If you're a very liberal Democrat, I urge you, help Nikki Haley too.
And just like Hillary Clinton, Nikki Haley shouldn't be president. Fight Right Inc. is responsible for the content.
That's a good one right there.
In journalism, trust is everything.
All right, whenever you're ready.
It must be earned every day in the truth of our words and the stories we tell.
All right, so I thought we were going to have more of those ads. I haven't seen those, so those were pretty interesting. But I just put in the chat, when the debate is on, I will be muted so you guys can watch it uninterrupted. And then when we go to commercial break, I will come in. I'll give my take on the segment that we just saw, and then I'll talk with you guys, read your comments, and we can have a discussion while we're at commercial break. And then when the debate comes back on, I'll mute myself again. And then at the end of the debate, of course, we can have a discussion before I end the stream. And yeah, no problem, Travis. Welcome. It's nice to have you guys here. Here we go.
All right, thank you very much for joining us here. The big moment, the last chance for this woman and three men who want to be your president to make the case to you before the holy days as to why they have the goods. Thank you for joining us here at News Nation. We're very excited to be able to give you politics the way it should be delivered, which is a debate that is about disagreement, but with decency, that's focused not on little discrete issues that only matter to the establishment, but about the issues that are a part of your life and your family's concerns every day. That's what we're hoping you take from this tonight, and then you get to make your own reasoned decisions. Now, after the debate, we will be back with the best in the business who have been there before to see who made the right points, who made a difference for themselves, and who did not. So now, stay tuned at the University of Alabama. History is about to be made.
Yeah, I thought so too, but I guess that guy got fired from CNN and he works here now.
And college football.
I'm not sure what the point of that was. They came back in for like a whole 30 seconds so he could say that.
But on this night, the final showdown of the year moves to a new stage on
We're gonna
America's newest
listen to this.
cable news network. 40 days before the Iowa caucuses, millions of votes are still up for grabs. And 4 candidates are fighting for every last one of them. Who could catch fire and shock the political world?
2024 is do or die for us. We're not getting a mulligan on this.
Governor Ron DeSantis.
We have to have a new generational leader.
Former Ambassador Nikki Haley.
You're either pro-American or you're anti-American. That is the choice we face.
Vivek Ramaswamy.
We deserve better character in the White House.
Former Governor Chris Christie. Live on NewsNation, news for all America. The lights are on. The field is set. It's game day in Alabama. And who knows what the tide will roll in.
The year live from the University of Alabama. I'm Megyn Kelly, host of the Megyn Kelly Show podcast on SiriusXM.
I'm Eliana Johnson with the Washington Free Beacon.
And I'm Elizabeth Vargas with NewsNation, and we are live on NewsNation and the CW. It is make or break time for the candidates on this stage right now, with the primary starting just weeks away. And we have a lot to cover over the next 2 hours. So let's begin with tonight's rules. Candidates will have 90 seconds to answer questions, 60 seconds to give a rebuttal at the moderator's discretion. You will all see the timing lights that will indicate when time is up and it's time to stop talking.
And the time we have is critical over the next 2 hours, so we ask the audience to please keep your applause to a minimum.
All right, with that, let's get started. On stage tonight, 4 candidates, all vying to become their party's nominee. And given the state of affairs in our political system right now, one of you might very well do it. Even many Democrats now admit that President Biden is a weak candidate, just as many Republicans acknowledge that former President Donald Trump's multiple legal troubles could imperil his quest for a second term, all of which means one of you could wind up the leader of the free world. Having said that, Mr. Trump is nearly 50 points ahead of all of you in the national polls, 29 points ahead in Iowa, where the GOP caucuses are less than 6 weeks away. And so, as Republicans get ready to vote on whether any of you might be preferable to Mr. Trump, we begin with the question of electability. Governor DeSantis, your campaign and its super PAC have spent the most money, had the most high net worth donors, and had a wave of momentum coming into this race after your big re-election win in Florida. You were seen by many as the candidate most likely to consolidate the non-Trump field. But here we are, a month out from the first real votes, and you haven't managed to do it. In fact, Nikki Haley is beating you in New Hampshire and South Carolina now, and closing in on you in Iowa, not to mention Trump, who is not only dominating in the early states, but is beating you in Florida by over 30 points. Is it fair to say, as Senator Tim Scott did when he dropped out, that voters are telling you, not no, but not now?
So we have a great idea in America that the voters actually make these decisions, not pundits or pollsters. I'm sick of hearing about these polls because I remember those polls in November of 2022. They said there was going to be a big red wave. It was going to be monumental, and that crashed and burned. The one place it didn't crash and burn was in the state of Florida. They weren't predicting that I would win the way I did, and I won the greatest Republican victory in the history of the state of Florida. I'm looking forward to Iowa and New Hampshire. The voters are going to be able to speak, and we're going to earn this nomination. And here's what we need. I am sick of Republicans who are not willing to stand up and fight back against what the left is doing to this country. You've got to be willing to stand strong, and you've got to be willing to beat these people. I'm the only one running for president that has beaten these people on issue after issue. We beat the teachers' unions when we did school choice. We beat Fauci on COVID. We beat George Soros when we removed 2 of his radical district attorneys. We beat the Democrats on election integrity. I have delivered results. That's what we need for this country. And you have other candidates up here like Nikki Haley. She caves anytime the left comes after her, anytime the media comes after her. I did a bill in Florida to stop the gender mutilation of minors. It's child abuse and it's wrong. She opposes that bill. She thinks it's fine and the law shouldn't get involved with it. If you're not willing to stand up for the kids, if you're not willing to stand up and say that it is wrong to mutilate these kids, then you're not going to fight for the people back home. I will fight for you and I will win for you.
Ambassador Haley, you left government service in 2018 with just $100,000 in the bank. 5 years later, you're reportedly worth $8 million, thanks to lucrative corporate speeches and board memberships like you had with Boeing. Weeks ago, you met with Wall Street heavyweights, including leaders from J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and BlackRock. Several other billionaire investors are reportedly ready to endorse you, or recently have, all of which comes with expectations. Aren't you too tight with the banks and the billionaires to win over the GOP's working class base, which mostly wants to break the system, not elect someone beholden to it?
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. You know, first I'll tell you, just to respond to Ron, he continues to lie about my record. I actually said his Don't Say Gay bill didn't go far enough because it only talked about gender until the 3rd grade. And I said it shouldn't be done at all, that's for parents to talk about. It shouldn't be talked about with schools. In reference to donors coming on board, look, we will take support from anybody we can take support from. But I have been a conservative fighter all my life. I was a Tea Party candidate when I became governor. We opposed every single corporate bailout we possibly could. We passed tort reform. We passed one of the toughest illegal immigration laws in the country. We passed pro-life bills. We moved in unemployment from 11% to 3%. We took on the unions, and we took on Obama when it came to the unions, the Syrian refugees, and everything in between. And so I've had a fight. And so as much as Ron says that, that's not true. But when it comes to these corporate people that want to suddenly support us, we'll take it. But I don't ask them what their policies are. They ask me what my policies are. And I tell them what it is. Sometimes they agree with me, sometimes they don't. Some don't like how tough I am on China. Some don't like the fact that I've signed pro-life bills. Some don't like the fact that I may oppose corporate bailouts. That doesn't matter. That's who I am. And that's why the most conservative grassroots group in the country, Americans for Prosperity, endorsed me last week.
Well, because you didn't respond to the criticism. It wasn't about the Parents' Rights and Education bill. It was about prohibiting sex change operations on minors. They do puberty blockers. These are irreversible. Talk to Chloe Cole. She went through this. Now she's an adult. She's warning against it. She may never be able to have kids again. That is what Nikki Haley opposed. She said the law shouldn't get involved in that. And I just ask you, if you're somebody that's going to be the president of the United States and you can't stand up against child abuse, how are you going to be able to stand up for anything? That is the truth. We have it on video.
I said that if you have to be 18 to get a tattoo, you should have to be 18 to have anything done to change your gender.
You said the law should stay out of it.
We're gonna get to this in more detail later. Let's finish with electability, but trust me, we're coming back to this issue. Mr. Ramaswamy, for months you campaigned as a unifier. Then you stood up at the first debate and attacked all of your competitors as bought and paid for. The second debate, you changed your tune, saying these are good people on this stage, admitting you can come across as a bit of a know-it-all and rejecting the practice of personal insults. By debate number 3, you called Nikki Haley corrupt, accused Ron DeSantis of wearing high heels, and told Ambassador Haley she should keep a closer eye on her daughter. Can you see how this has led some to conclude you are not, in fact, a unifier, and to question your authenticity?
Megyn, I think there's a time and place for everything. We need somebody in the White House who absolutely is going to be a fighter when it counts. And I did say that there were some good people on that stage in that third debate. Doug Burgum was on that stage at that time, and I'll say that jokingly. Ron DeSantis is a good person, too. I want to go back, though, to Nikki Haley's comment from earlier that she is somehow not responding to the will of these donors. Nikki, you were bankrupt when you left the UN. After you left the UN, you became a military contractor. You actually started joining service on the board of Boeing, whose back you scratched for a very long time, and then gave foreign multinational speeches like Hillary Clinton is, and now you're a multimillionaire. That math does not add up. It adds up to the fact that you are corrupt. And when I said they were bought and paid for, I meant the Republican establishment, not the Democratic establishment. Now you have Reid Hoffman, the person who's effectively George Soros Jr., funding lawsuits across this country against Donald Trump to keep him off the ballot, funding left-wing causes. We discovered this week that he is one of Nikki Haley's largest supporters. Larry Fink, the king of the woke industrial complex, the ESG movement, the CEO of BlackRock, the most powerful company in the world, now supporting Nikki Haley. And to say that doesn't affect her is false, because it's after that meeting later that day that she says that every American needs to be doxxed by having their ID, their government-issued ID, tied to what they say on the internet. So I think that this is far more corrupt than I even imagined when I entered politics. But I will say this. It is going to take a leader from the outside, with fresh legs, from the next generation to unite this country. Not the broken politicians who are puppets of the puppet masters, but the actual people in this country. Thomas Jefferson was 33 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. I think it's going to take somebody whose best days in life are still ahead to see a country whose best days are ahead of itself. And I think I can reach that next generation better than anybody else in this race.
Thank you. Response.
Megyn. First of all, we weren't bankrupt when I left the UN. We're people of service. My husband is in the military, and I served our country as UN ambassador and governor. It may be bankrupt to him, but it certainly wasn't bankrupt to us. Secondly, I did serve on the board of Boeing. I did a lot of work with Boeing when I was governor. They were a great partner to me. I served for 10 months. And then when they decided after COVID that they wanted to go for a corporate bailout, I've never supported corporate bailout, so I respectfully stepped back and got off the board. I love Boeing. They build good commercial airplanes. They build airplanes for our Air Force. I am proud of them. They employ a lot of people in South Carolina. But that's why I left the Boeing board. There's nothing to what he's saying. And in terms of these donors that are supporting me, they're just jealous. They wish that they were supporting them. But I'm not going to sit there and deny
Let me get the governor in, and then I'll go to Governor DeSantis.
And Vivek, he wrote a book talking about ESG and these woke corporations and BlackRock. The idea that I want to do that in Florida, they were managing our part of our pension, and then when they did the ESG, I took $2 billion away from BlackRock. We took action. This ESG, they call it environment, social governance, and again, Nikki is meeting with all these people. They want to use economic power to impose a left-wing agenda on this country. They want basically to change society without having to go through the constitutional process. We've kneecapped it in the state of Florida. The next president of the United States needs to be able to go to that office on day one and end ESG. And the fact of the matter is, we know from her history, Nikki will cave to those big donors when it counts. And that is not acceptable.
I did write that book, Ron, and the irony is Nikki Haley was heaping praise on me when I wrote that book, but now I worry. I was warning about the woke industrial complex in this country as a warning. Apparently, she read it as a how-to manual, just like she reads George Orwell's books as well. And so I think that that's actually far more dangerous than, this is really important for people to understand. We're marching towards fascism under Biden. Jack Smith has subpoenaed every last retweet that someone has issued from Donald Trump in the year 2020. The only person more fascist than the Biden regime now is Nikki Haley, who thinks the government should identify every one of those individuals with an ID. That is not freedom. That is fascism. And she should come nowhere near the levers of power, let alone the White House.
I've got to get to Governor Christie. I haven't forgotten about you, sir.
No, but can I just say,
can you speak?
I really appreciate that.
How you doing, sir?
Good to see you.
Can you please speak to the requirement that you said that every anonymous internet user needs to out themselves? They're both hitting you on it.
I would be happy to, and I love all the attention, fellas. Thank you for that. You know, I'll say this. What I said was that social media companies need to show us their algorithms. I also said there are millions of bots on social media right now. They're foreign, they're Chinese, they're Iranian. I will always fight for freedom of speech for Americans. We do not need freedom of speech for Russians and Iranians and Hamas. We need social media companies to go and fight back on all of these bots that are happening. That's what I said. As a mom, do I think that social media would be more civil if we went and had people's names next to that? Yes, I do think that, because I think we've got too much cyberbullying. I think we've got child pornography and all of those things. But having said that, I never said government should go and require anyone's name.
That's false. She said, I want your name.
She
as President of the United States, her first day in office, she said, one of the first things I'm going to do,
I said we were going to get the millions of bots.
She wants government ID to dox every American.
That's what she said. You can roll the tape. She said, I want your name. And that was going to be one of the first things she did in office. And then she got real serious blowback, and understandably so, because it'd be a massive expansion of government. We have anonymous speech. The Federalist Papers were written with anonymous writers. Jay, Madison, and Hamilton, they went under Publius. It's something that's important, and especially given how conservatives have been attacked and they've lost jobs and they've been canceled. You know the regime would use that to weaponize that against our own people.
Okay,
it was a bad idea, and she should own up to it.
Come on now, what are we doing here?
15 seconds, and then there is the governor, former governor of New Jersey.
This cracks me up because Ron is so hypocritical, because he actually went and tried to push a law that would stop anonymous people from talking to the press, and went so far to say bloggers should have to register with the state if they're going to write about elected officials. It was in the, check your newspaper. It was absolutely there. I have never said government should
trample on your constitutional rights.
You can come back to it later.
This is more dangerous than the Democrats.
You're lying. This section's over. Okay. Governor Christie.
Really?
Just that piece.
I'm usually not somebody who gets missed, but okay, let's go.
What's happening? Okay, I got you. Listen, you endorsed Donald Trump in 2016 and 2020. You gave him an A for his first term. Since then, however, you've turned on him, calling him a liar, a loser, a con man, and someone who cannot win. You've even said that you got into this race just to stop President Trump. His approval rating with Republicans is currently at 81%. Yours is at 25. Your best state is New Hampshire, and even there, 2/3 of GOP voters say they would be angry and disappointed if you won. Respectfully, Governor, you have not stopped Mr. Trump, and voters may wonder how you could possibly become the nominee of a party that does not appear to like you very much.
Yeah, well, look, Megyn, it's often very difficult to be the only person on the stage who's telling the truth, and the only person who is taking on what needs to be taken on. I look at my watch now. We're 17 minutes into this debate, and except for your little speech in the beginning, we've had these three acting as if the race is between the four of us. The fifth guy, who doesn't have the guts to show up and stand here, he's the one who, as you just put it, is way ahead in the polls. And yet, I've got these three guys who are all seemingly to compete with, Voldemort, he who shall not be named. They don't want to talk about it. The fact is that when you go and you say the truth about somebody who is a dictator, a bully, who has taken shots at everybody, whether they've given him great service or not over time, who dares to disagree with him, then I understand why these three are timid to say anything about it. Maybe it's because they have future aspirations. Maybe those future aspirations are now, or maybe they're 4 years from now. But the fact of the matter is the truth needs to be told. And for us to go 17 minutes without discussing the guy who has all those gaudy numbers you talked about is ridiculous. I'm in this race because the truth needs to be spoken. He is unfit. This is a guy who just said this past week that he wants to use the Department of Justice to go after his enemies when he gets in there. I mean, the fact of the matter is, he is unfit to be president, and there is no bigger issue in this race, Megyn, than Donald Trump, and those numbers prove it.
Governor Christie, we will be addressing that issue of Donald Trump in just a moment, but I'd like to first get to some questions on Israel. Governor DeSantis, tonight as we speak, the war is back on in Gaza. Israeli tanks are on the move and have surrounded the home of the leader of Hamas. 8 Americans have been held hostage in the tunnels beneath Gaza for 60 days now. American troops and warships in the Middle East are under attack. How far would you go as president to secure the release of those 8 American hostages? And would it include sending American forces into combat?
We have to look out for our people. When there are hostages, Commander-in-Chief, you have to do whatever you can to get them done. But the overall issue with this is this administration is trying to hobble Israel from being able to defend itself. They have a right to eliminate Hamas and win a total and complete victory so that they never have to deal with this again. Hamas wants nothing less than a second Holocaust. They would wipe off every single Jew off the map. They would destroy the state of Israel if we could. Joe Biden will say they support Israel, and then they do nothing but try to kneecap them every step of the way. You should not try to direct their war effort. We should work together with them so that they can bring Hamas to heel. Look, I served in Iraq back in the day. I'm the only one running for president that served in the military. I understand that part of the world. It's not the best part of the world. We do have troops there that Biden is leaving basically as sitting ducks. And you have the Iranians that are attacking these troops, and he's responding with basically pinpricks. If you harm an American service member, you're going to have hell to pay when I'm president. We are not going to let our troops be sitting ducks. We also need to look at what's the underlying problem here. Iran. Biden is doing nothing to bring Iran to account. You got to turn the screws on them. Don't let them have any oil revenue. The money they get, they send to Hamas, they send to Hezbollah, and they foment jihad throughout the Middle East. So Biden has empowered Iran just like he's empowered other adversaries. We stand with Israel. They're our best ally in the Middle East. We have a unique relationship with them, and you will see a strong relationship when I'm the president of the United States.
But would you send American troops?
Elizabeth, look, this is the problem with the first 3 debates. Ron gets asked a question, and he doesn't answer it. Your question was very specific. You said, would you send American troops as commander-in-chief? And he went on to this minute and 30-second hosanna about his knowledge of the military and what we need to do, and didn't answer your question. Look, when you're president of the United States, you're not going to have a choice whether to answer that question or not. Your generals, your Secretary of Defense, your Secretary of State, your National Security Advisor are going to present plans to you. They're going to look at you and say, do we go or don't we, Mr. President? And you can't give a 90-second speech about your military service, as laudable as it is.
Would you send American troops in to rescue those hostages?
I would absolutely. If they had a plan which showed me that we could get them out safely, you're damn right I'd send the American Army in there to get our people home and get them home now. And I'll answer that question directly.
Thank you, Governor Christie. Mr. Ramaswamy, you have said it was irresponsible for Ambassador Haley to call Hamas's terrorist rampage an attack on America and for her to, quote, rabidly shout, finish them, end quote. The Hamas terror attack left dozens of Americans dead and was the deadliest attack on Jews since the Holocaust. Why wouldn't it be a good thing to finish Hamas?
Finish them was purposefully vague in a discussion that included Iran, which is what I objected to. And I think it's, as U.S. president, you have to be responsible. What happened to Israel was dead wrong. What Hamas did was medieval. It was subhuman. It was immoral. And we have to call that out for what it is on October 7th. But to say that that was an attack on America fails a basic test. I mean, Nick, if you can't tell the difference between where Israel is and the U.S. is on a map, I can have my 3-year-old son show you the difference. That is irresponsible because it has major consequences, because that doesn't leave room for what actually is an attack on America. So I believe I have the strongest pro-Israel position actually on the stage, even though it's a little bit different than the standard GOP talking points. And it is this. The founding vision of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, the George Washington figure of Israel, what did he believe? He believed that we don't want, as Israel, to depend on the fleeting sympathies of the West and have our hands tied. I think Israel has an absolute right to defend itself to the fullest, without the U.S., the UN, or the EU, or anybody else second-guessing their decisions, as the Biden administration, guess what, is now starting to do. I think that's a more deeply pro-Israel position than anybody else, and it keeps the actual lines of accountability clear because it is a pro-American position. And as leader of the United States of America, just as a father of 2 sons, my sole moral duty is to my family. As your next president, my sole moral duty is to you, the people of this country. That's how I'm going to lead. So I'll tell Bibi, you smoke the terrorists on your southern border, you go ahead and we're rooting for you. We're going to smoke the terrorists on our own southern border, and that's how I'm going to lead this country.
But Americans were killed in that attack. Americans were killed in that attack. And so if you looked at this terrorist attack and the number of Americans, this would be one of the top 10 terrorist attacks in American history. So our own people were killed in that attack. And I think it's absolutely appropriate to point that out and to say that we're in this together and we are going to work with Israel so that these people are brought to justice.
I agree with that.
Ambassador Haley, I'm coming to you. Iran is on the threshold of becoming a nuclear state. The Wall Street Journal reported that Iranian military leaders gave the green light for Hamas's attack on Israel. You said in last month's debate that, by contrast to the Biden administration's approach to Iran, you would, quote, punch them once and punch them hard. Were you saying that it's time to bomb Iran?
No, I was not saying it's time to bomb Iran, but I will tell you, I dealt with Iran every day when I was at the United Nations, and they only respond to strength. What they don't respond to is when you weaken the sanctions like they did on Iran that allowed China to send them billions to fill their proxies. What they don't respond to is when you give $6 billion for 5 hostages. That only makes them want more hostages. What they don't respond to is when they do 140 strikes on our men and women in Syria and Iraq, and we do nothing but just some small shots back. You've got to punch them, you've got to punch them hard, and let them know that. That's the only way they're going to respond. So the way you do that is you go after their infrastructure in Syria and Iraq where they're hitting our soldiers. That's what you do, and then that's when they'll back off. The problem is you have to see that all of these are related. If you look at the fact Russia was losing that war with Ukraine, Putin had hit rock bottom. They had raised the draft age to 65. He was getting drones and missiles, drones from Iran, missiles from North Korea. And so what happened? When he hit rock bottom, all of a sudden, his other friend, Iran, Hamas goes and invades Israel and butchers those people on Putin's birthday. There is no one happier right now than Putin because all of the attention America had on Ukraine suddenly went to Israel. And that's what they were hoping is going to happen. We need to make sure that we have full clarity that there is a reason, again, that Taiwanese want to help Ukrainians because they know if Ukraine wins, China won't invade Taiwan. There's a reason the Ukrainians want to help Israelis because they know that if Iran wins, Russia wins. These are all connected. But what wins all of that is a strong America, not a weak America. And that's what Joe Biden's given us.
I want to say one thing about the tie to Ukraine, if I may. So foreign policy experience is not the same as foreign policy wisdom. I want everybody at home to note that I was the first person to say we need a reasonable peace deal in Ukraine. Now a lot of the neocons are quietly coming along to that position, with the exceptions of Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, who still support this, what I believe is pointless war in Ukraine. And I think those with foreign policy experience, one thing that Joe Biden and Nikki Haley have in common is that neither of them could even state for you 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine that they want to send our troops to actually fight for. Look at that. This is what I want people to understand. These people have, I mean, she has no idea what the hell the names of those provinces are, but she wants to send our sons and daughters and our troops and our military equipment to go fight it. So reject this myth that they've been selling you, that somebody had a cup of coffee stint at the UN and then makes $8 million after, has real foreign policy experience. It takes an outsider to see this through. Look at the blank expression. She doesn't know the names of the provinces that she wants to actually fight for. And there's her puppet masters right there, the donors right there that are playing her like the puppet masters.
Hold on.
Let me just say something here. You know, his reasonable peace deal in Ukraine, he made it clear. Give them all the land they've already stolen, promise Putin you'll never put Ukraine in Russia, and then trust Putin not to have a relationship with China. Let me tell you something. That's no reasonable.
That's not my deal. That's not my deal,
yes,
Chris.
It's exactly what you said. You do this at every debate.
I'll tell you exactly what it is.
Don't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you. Okay? You say this. You do this. You do this at every debate. You go out on the stump and you say something. All of us see it on video. We confront you on the debate stage. You say you didn't say it, and then you back away. And I want to say
what exactly what I said, Chris.
I'm not done yet.
Well, this
now
is
look.
This is nonsense. This man is spewing. This man is spewing nonsense.
Let me tell you something. This is the 4th debate. The 4th debate that you would be voted in the first 20 minutes as the most obnoxious blowhard in America. So shut up for a little while.
I'm going to respond to that.
Chris, your version
of no, I want to say after the main book,
I'll take that.
I want to say something else. We're now 25 minutes into this debate, and he has insulted Nikki Haley's basic intelligence, not her positions, her basic intelligence. She doesn't know regions. She wouldn't be able to find something on a map that his 3-year-old could find. Look, if you want to disagree on issues, that's fine. And Nikki and I disagree on some issues. But I'll tell you this, I've known her for 12 years, which is longer than he's even started to vote in a Republican primary. And while we disagree about some issues and we disagree about who should be president of the United States, what we don't disagree on is this is a smart, accomplished woman, and you should stop insulting her.
So I'm going to take this, several times over. So first of all, I think we just learned something from Chris Christie. We learned three things. We learned three things right there. First of all, Chris Christie also doesn't know what provinces in eastern Ukraine he actually wants us to fight for. Chris, your version of foreign policy experience was closing a bridge from New Jersey to New York. Yeah. So do everybody a favor, just walk yourself off that stage, enjoy a nice meal, and get the hell out of this race. When it comes to Nikki, I think if you're going to actually send your sons and daughters to go die in somebody else's war, you better, excuse me, Chris, I'm speaking, and I'm not done yet.
I haven't heard a time when you aren't
and we're going to be
speaking.
done. So listen up to this, is if these people want to send your sons and daughters to go die in Ukraine, they've been arguing for it for a year. $200 billion of our taxpayer money sent over. Neither of them could even name for you the provinces that they actually want to protect. And this is the people who have been touting their so-called foreign policy experience. It is intellectual fraud. These people are lying to you, the same people who told you about weapons and mass destruction in Iraq. To justify that invasion, didn't know the first thing about it, yet they sent thousands of our sons and daughters to go die. The same people who told you the same in Afghanistan, where the Taliban is still in charge 20 years later. $7 trillion of our national debt due to these toxic neocons. You can put lipstick on a Dick Cheney, it is still a fascist neocon.
Thank
you,
you,
Mr.
Mr.
see that
Ramaswamy.
today.
Thank you, Mr.
It's Dick
Ramaswamy.
Cheney all over again in this party.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. 15 seconds.
Name the provinces. Neither of you could even name the first thing about Eastern Europe.
I think we've had enough of this.
Think about that.
Let me just...
It's actually, Crimea is the wrong answer.
All right.
The floor is Christie's.
All right, let me just say this. You know, this is the kind of thing where he talks about experience. You know, I was the U.S. attorney in New Jersey when the terrorist attacks were launched against the United States in 2001. I brought the first two cases in this country against terrorists who tried to attack us again. And I know about the threat of terrorism and bullying in this country and around the world. And at that time, he was learning about the provinces in Ukraine, sitting with his smart-ass mouth at Harvard. That's what was going on. And so the fact of the matter is, and back then he was a Democrat. So you know the fact is that all he knows how to do.
Well, you were busy hugging Barack Obama getting him elected.
Thank you.
All he knows how to do is insult good people who have committed their lives to public service and not say anything that moves the ball down the field for the United States.
All right. Thank you, Governor Christie. We are going to take a quick break, cool things down a little bit. When we come back, we're going to tackle issues on the southern border. We'll be back in a few minutes.
All right, guys, bear with me. I have to bring in my panelists for discussion. The screen might stop for a second. It's not broken. I'm just messing with the Discord. Hello.
What's up? I came in at the right time. I heard, this a lot back and forth.
Yeah, it's a pretty good debate so far. Do you want to just give your thoughts, and while you do that, I'm going to make sure that your audio is coming through?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I could not believe how bad Vivek was looking at the end and how good Christie was looking. And it seemed that from Vivek and Ron DeSantis were both trying to, at the beginning, pick apart Nikki Haley. Ron DeSantis, because he's trying to essentially keep his place as the #1 outside of Trump, prevent Nikki from replacing him. And Vivek, because he's trying to claw into that spot right there and replace them both. But seems that Nikki Haley largely was able to hold her ground. Vivek looked really bad with Christie, and Christie made him look got more cheers than Vivek did. And I was surprised that a bunch of people were actually booing Vivek at one point, and even one person I heard from the crowd said, "Go home." So Vivek really tried to come back with that last statement, but those cheers that he got were not show that really he didn't really come back as much as he hoped he would. I was surprised that Christie came out trashing him, and he did a really good job of it.
Yeah, so I think Vivek did pretty well in that exchange right there. The fact that, Nikki Haley and all these people are so adamant about Ukraine and they can't name 3 provinces, that's pretty alarming, and that really does make them look stupid. I
don't think they named any because I don't think there was a point to it. Because once you start then going into the particulars, then you get drawn into what his strategy is then because he wants to make this a whole, Ukraine intervention debate. He wants to be the candidate who says, I want to keep us out of Ukraine. They want to put you in. And then I think they want to avoid getting into a particulars brawl because that just gives Vivek more time that they don't want to give him. Nikki Haley wants to supplant Ron DeSantis. She doesn't want Vivek to supplant her. And Christie is good back and forth. He likes the brawl, but he wants to play it via his way. He's not going to let Vivek draw him in the way he wants.
Yeah. So Chris Christie kind of fell flat in the previous debates. I feel like tonight he's coming out strong. He's energetic. He's well spoken tonight. He's getting his point across well, I think, anyways. Vivek, he's kind of toned it down a little bit, but in a way that is, I feel, more productive. So I think both of them are doing well, even though, I guess there's a side here, Christie or Vivek. I think they're both doing well. DeSantis, he seems like he's less awkward than he normally is, but he's kind of, I want to see him get more fired up. I feel like he should have responded to the criticism from Chris Christie right off the bat. He kind of just brushed that off and didn't say anything. Nikki Haley, she's, had really good performances in the first 3 debates. She seems to be kind of trying to not rock the boat right now. She's not really, being as aggressive as she was in the last few debates. So it's just interesting. I think we're coming back here. So let's turn up the volume.
To the Republican primary debate live on News Nation from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We are now going to go to the crisis on the southern border. Polls show immigration and the crisis are among the most pressing issues for Republican voters right now. Both the issue of migrants crossing illegally into our country and the separate issue of fentanyl being smuggled in mostly through legal ports of entry. All year, News Nation has been at the border documenting the crisis. In 2023 alone, Border Patrol encountered a record 2.4 million migrants. All 4 of you have talked tough. The question now is, how realistic is the talk? So, Governor DeSantis, I'd like to start with you. You have pledged to send the military to the southern border on day 1 of your administration with orders to shoot, quote, stone cold dead anyone illegally entering with a backpack that you believe contains fentanyl. Critics have called this a shoot first, ask questions later policy that would amount to extrajudicial killing. You are a former military lawyer. Why do you think this idea of yours would be legal?
The drug cartels are invading our country, and they are killing our citizens by the tens of thousands every year. We had a situation in Florida. There was an 18-month-old baby that was crawling on the floor of an Airbnb rental. There was fentanyl residue on the carpet, and the baby died. Is this acceptable in this country? I know the elites in D.C., they don't care. They don't care that fentanyl is ravaging your community. They don't care that illegal aliens are ravaging our community and overwhelming our community. The commander-in-chief not only has a right you have a responsibility to fight back against these people.
And does that mean shooting first?
It means you're gonna categorize them as foreign terrorist organizations, and we will identify just like we would anywhere. When I was in Iraq, the Al Qaeda wasn't wearing a uniform. You'd see anyone walking down the street, they all had man dresses on. You didn't know if someone had a bomb, an IED attached or not. And so you had to make a judgment based on intelligence, based on positive identification. But we're going to be able to get the intelligence on these cartel people. And here's the thing. If we had a wall across the southern border, which I support, this would not have happened. We need to build a wall across the southern border. I'll get it done, and Mexico is supposed to pay for it. Remember, here's how you do that. I'm going to have fees on remittances from foreign workers when they send the money back to foreign countries. We're going to tax it, and we're going to build a wall with that. So, yes, you should have had that. But we don't have it. I'm going to build it. But we have to lean in on this problem. I am not going to sit there and allow mothers to lose more kids because of fentanyl overdose. I am not going to sit there and let sex trafficking go unabated or human trafficking go unabated. There's going to be a new sheriff in town, and these drug cartels better buckle up.
Thank you. Ambassador Haley, you have pledged to catch and deport all migrants who are here in this country illegally. But then you said in Londonderry, New Hampshire last month that you will not deport those who are working and paying taxes rather than feeding off the system. Which is it?
So first of all, what I said is all of the 7 or 8 million illegals that have come under Biden's watch absolutely have to go back. We have to stop the incentive of what's bringing them over here in the first place. Biden just gave temporary protective status to 500,000 Venezuelans. That's 500,000 Social Security cards. That's 500,000 driver's licenses. And I know from my time at the United Nations, the first thing they do is pick up the phone and said, we came over, come on over. And that's what sends more. You have to go and deport these people so they know it can't happen again. For those that have been here longer than that, we've got to start seeing who is it, how long have they been here, have they been vetted, have they paid taxes, have they been working, and figure out who else is out there. But what I know is my parents came here legally. They put in the time, they put in the price. They are offended by those that are coming illegally. We can't let them skip the line. But when you talk about fentanyl like you did before, let's look at something else. Yes, I think we should send special operations over and take out the cartels. I think we should do a remain in Mexico policy so they never step foot in U.S. soil in the first place. But look at where fentanyl came from. Let's go to the heart of the matter. It came from China. That's why we need to end all normal trade relations with China until they stop murdering Americans with fentanyl. I promise you, they need our economy. They will immediately stop that. But this is where Trump went wrong. Trump was good on trade, but that's all he was with China. Because here he allowed fentanyl to continue to come over. He continued to allow them to he would give them technology that would build up their military and hurt us. He allowed the Chinese infiltration for them to buy up farmland, to put money in our universities, and to continue to do things that were harmful for America. We now have a spy base in Cuba and police stations, and Trump didn't do anything about it.
Thank you.
China, though, I mean, this is rich, because when she was governor of South Carolina, she was the #1 ranked governor of bringing the CCP into her state. She wrote a love letter to the Chinese ambassador saying how great a friend China is. You can look at it. We put it on our website, rondesantis.com. There's also a video of her as governor standing in front of a Chinese flag with a Chinese business saying that she now works for them, talking about this Chinese company. So she's been very weak on China. Now, here's the problem. The rhetoric is different, but her donors, these Wall Street liberal donors, they make money in China. They are not going to let her be tough on China, and she will cave to the donors. She will not stand up for you.
15 seconds, Ambassador.
First of all, he's mad because those Wall Street donors used to support him, and now they support me. The second thing is he has a company, a Chinese company, UGAS, that he just did a rally there last year. They have given you $340,000 in campaign donations between them and their employees. They are tied to the Communist Chinese Party. Jinko Solar is another one. They went and expanded. You gave $2 million in subsidies.
I banned China from buying land in the state of Florida.
The Department of
I ejected the Confucius Institute. Nikki Haley brought Confucius Institutes to the universities in South Carolina.
That is not true.
I ejected them. So I have a record of standing up and do what's right. And here's the thing.
You have a record of lying.
She's trying to say things like that. Even the liberal media groups that usually if I say the sky is blue, they'll fact check me and say that's wrong. They looked at her charges. They said it was totally false, that they could not find one instance of me recruiting a Chinese business coming to Florida. You know why? Because we never recruited any Chinese businesses to the state of Florida.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy, over the past year, fentanyl has killed more than 75,000 Americans, 1,000 of them right here in Alabama. You have vowed to use the military to, quote, annihilate drug labs inside Mexico, something the president of Mexico said would be a hostile act. But fentanyl can easily be made anywhere, and labs that are shut down can easily and quickly be replaced. Are your tough enforcement policies offering false hope to a country racked by addiction?
To the contrary, I don't think it's going to have to come to that if we deal with the actual demand side problem that we also have in this country. I mean, the easy part is talking about how we're going to use our military to secure the border. I will, and I believe that everybody else wants to do the same thing. But the harder part is dealing with the crisis of purpose and meaning, the mental health epidemic raging across this country like wildfire. And there's a reason why after the opioid crisis, you see fentanyl. And even after we get fentanyl, and we are going to be sure to make sure we do it, this one is worse for many reasons. They're illegally lacing it into pharmaceuticals, so it's more dangerous. But we're deluding ourselves. The real false promise here is thinking that we're going to have dealt with that underlying mental health epidemic in this country by just dealing with the demand side of it. But I want to get back to this issue of the root cause, because a lot of these are coming from labs in Wuhan, China, of all places. Drug materials that are going to the Mexican drug cartels that they're pumping across that southern border like a modern opium war. I think it is going to take a U.S. president that's going to have a very different conversation with Xi Jinping than what Joe Biden just had in California. I will tell Xi Jinping, you will not only not buy land in this country or donate to universities in this country. U.S. businesses won't expand into the Chinese market until they're playing by the same set of rules. And the same country that's putting fentanyl into illegal pharmaceuticals in Mexico, it's no coincidence, is the exact same country that also unleashed hell on the world with the COVID-19 pandemic. We also have to hold them accountable with every financial lever that we have available. That is what it actually means to stand with a spine. And you mark my words, if we're willing to stand with the spine, China will absolutely have to fold because they're in a tougher spot than we are. And then we're back to playing by the same set of rules.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. Thank you. Let's talk about the economy. Ambassador Haley, homeownership has always been part of the American dream, but it's increasingly out of reach for younger Americans. This year, mortgage rates reached 30-year highs. Home prices have risen $190,000 over the past decade. Is this the free market at work? Or should the federal government do something to make homes more affordable?
Well, first of all, I mean, you're exactly right. My daughter just got married, and I saw how hard it was for her and her husband to buy a home. Right now, the average homeowner in America is 49 years old. You've got young people everywhere. That used to be the American dream, and now it's out of reach. But you look at what happened. You first of all look at what the Fed did. The Fed did a terrible job when they allowed all of that money to go through. You saw the Treasury bond rates go up. That affected mortgage rates, that affected automobile rates, that affected insurance rates. And so now we have a high interest rate. You've got a supply issue. Ask any builder. The supply issues have continued to be there. That's caused the rate to go up. And then you've got insurances that have gone up. And so what you have is a lot of younger people who, one, can't afford a home, but two, the banks aren't lending them any money. They've made the regulations so hard that they don't want to give loans on mortgages anymore. So what we have to do is we have to open it up. We have to, one, grow our economy so that people have more money in their pockets. We've got to look at the supply chain and make sure that we are funneling that so that builders don't have to sit there and go overseas to find things. And then we need to make sure that we really stop paying down this debt, make sure that we stop the borrowing, stop the spending. I'll veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels, because our kids are not going to forgive us for all the spending that happened. And as much as everybody wants to talk about how Donald Trump had a good economy, $9 trillion in debt he did just in 4 years. And we're all paying the price of that, including those mortgage prices.
We're going to come back to President Trump, I promise. Governor DeSantis, The latest NewsNation Decision Desk poll found that inflation tops the worries of American voters. 61% say they're very concerned, and the working class is hardest hit. Economists say this was fueled by a glut of federal spending. The Biden administration has added $6 trillion to the national debt so far, but President Trump wasn't exactly a penny pincher. His administration added $7.8 trillion. Do Republicans, including President Trump, share the blame for inflation? And what concrete steps would a President DeSantis take to help Americans make ends meet?
The borrowing, printing, and spending of money was both parties in Washington, D.C. That's just a fact. These Republicans in Washington have spent. It's driven your prices higher, and it's driven your interest rates to the point where you can't afford. I met a young fella in Iowa. He had graduated college a couple years ago, and he's like, Governor, I don't have a chance. I'm gainfully employed. He's like, I have no chance to afford a home and start a family. That is taking the American dream away from people. So we're going to get the inflation down. We're going to get the interest rates down. We are going to reduce spending, and I will be willing to veto, and I vetoed a lot as governor of Florida, and we'll do that. We're also going to open up all of our domestic energy for production. Lower your gas prices, lower the price of fuel. That's going to help the economy. It also help jobs, and we'll do it. But, you know, another thing that's burdening young people are these student loans. Now, I don't support having a truck driver having to pay a student loan for someone that got a degree in gender studies. That is wrong. We should not have taxpayers do that. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to get to the root cause of the problem. These student loans are going to be backed by the universities because they need to have an incentive to produce gainful employment for people. They should not be indulging in ideological studies. They should be focusing on things that work. And we're going to take some of this money and we're going to move it to actual vocational training. In Florida, we doubled apprenticeships. We have more truck drivers. These are in-demand skills. Don't let anybody tell you that the only way you can be successful is through a 4-year brick and ivy degree. That's one way you can be. It's not the only way, and we're going to fix that problem in the United States of America.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you've praised cryptocurrency like Bitcoin as an opt-out from our, quote, broken financial architecture, and you oppose efforts to regulate it. The head of the largest international crypto exchange just pleaded guilty to allowing his platform to launder money for terrorists, including Hamas. You say your cryptocurrency plan will, quote, ensure economic freedom for Americans, end quote. Won't it also ensure economic freedom for fraudsters, criminals, and terrorists?
Look, fraudsters, criminals, and terrorists have been defrauding people for a long time. Our regulations need to catch up with the current moment. The fact that SBF was able to do what he did at FTX shows that whatever they have as the current framework isn't working. And I think it is nothing short of embarrassing that Gary Gensler, the current leader of the SEC, in front of Congress, could not even say whether Ethereum counted as a regulated security or not. And so I think that this is just another example of the administrative state gone too far. Here's the dirty little secret in American politics today. The people who we elect to run the government are not the ones who are even actually running the government. It is the bureaucrats in those 3-letter agencies that are writing regulations that Congress never gave them the authority to write. And the good news is a U.S. president can absolutely fix that. That takes a U.S. president with a spine. So what I've said is in my administration, by the end of year 1, we will have a 75% reduction in the number of federal bureaucrats. We will shut down government agencies that should not exist. We will rescind any regulation that fails the test of West Virginia versus EPA, which is the most important Supreme Court case of our lifetime, that said if Congress didn't delegate that to an administrative agency, then it's unconstitutional. These are seismic changes. These are big changes that the next president can deliver without asking Congress for permission or for forgiveness. And I want people to understand that distinction, because people have been sold myths by politicians for a long time saying, I'm going to work with Congress to do this or that. Much of what you've heard on the stage from the other politicians fit that description. They need Congress. The things that I'm promising you, this is what the leader of the executive branch gets to do under Article 2 of the Constitution.
Thank you, sir.
Cut down the bureaucracy.
Well,
that's how we grow our economy and put the Federal Reserve in its place. This is part of the crypto discussion.
No.
90%
Mr.
headcount reduction at the Fed.
You're out of time. 15 seconds, Governor DeSantis.
So one of the dangers that we're going to face, Biden wants, is a central bank digital currency. They want to get rid of cash, crypto. They want to force you to do that. They'll take away your privacy. They will absolutely regulate your purchases On day one as president, we take the idea of central bank digital currency and we throw it in the trash can. It'll be dead on arrival.
I agree with that. Gotta go to break. Gotta get a break. I have a whole second hour to get to. It's exciting. And when we come back, we got a big subject. Huge, you might even say. Donald Trump. Stay tuned.
Oh boy, we're gonna be talking about Trump when they come back. All right, so Neocon, what did you make of that last segment?
Oh, Vivek did better. You know, that was his last performance was better, but they didn't. The thing that stood out to me the most is they didn't even ask Chris Christie one question. Ron DeSantis got asked 2, Nikki Haley got asked 1, Vivek got asked 1. The fair thing to do is yes, go 1, 1, 1, 1 across the board. Chris Christie does not that's the polite thing to do is not interrupt, but if you're not going to get asked a question, you've got to interrupt, you've got to interject yourself, because otherwise you risk getting shut out. Ron DeSantis did better, Nikki Haley did good. I think Ron DeSantis though did better though than Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley keeps trying to supplant Ron and throw an occasional jab at Trump. But Ron DeSantis kind of put her in her place in that one with the, Chinese Institute and CCP influence and stuff like that. Vivek did better. It seems like he actually, when in that last point right there, those are my thoughts right there. But Chris Christie, he definitely does not want to get shut out, especially when in the fourth debate, which is extremely critical for him to break out.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is probably Chris Christie's last hurrah. If he doesn't do something here, it's probably over for him. And, to be fair to him, he kind of came out swinging, and that's what he needed to do. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the things that he says, but I think being genuine and being aggressive is a smart strategy as a candidate. So when he came out and made the case for himself and wasn't being fake about Trump, because let's be honest, what Chris Christie is saying, the other 3 candidates on the stage agree with, but they just are cowards and won't say it out loud. And, I say cowards. I don't hate. I like DeSantis. I like Vivek. But, they need to make the case for themselves. Like, why? So, I was a big fan of Vivek right out of the gate when he first launched, because he was a little guy and he was saying a lot of good things. But then, as we had a few debates and I've heard more from him, I sit there and scratch my head. Why would I support Trump 2.0 when Trump himself is in the race? So, like, Vivek, DeSantis, I feel they need to make their own case. They need to have something that is different about them from Trump. Just being Trump light that's not appealing to anybody. You're not appealing to the anti-Trump vote. You're not appealing to the hardcore conservative. You're not appealing to, you're not bringing new people into the party. When Trump came in 2016, he stood out. He was different than the other 16 candidates in the race. And that's why he rose to the top the way he did and took everybody down. So, if DeSantis or some of these other people in the race took Chris Christie's strategy of aggressiveness, I feel like if it was anybody other than Christie, it would probably be way more effective, because Republican voters have kind of made up their mind about Christie. So I feel like he's the wrong person to try and convey the anti-Trump message. I'm not saying that I'm against Trump. I'm just saying from a strictly strategic standpoint and in terms of electoral politics, if I was running DeSantis's campaign, I would come in day one and say, okay, Ron, you've got to completely change up what you're doing here. This is not appealing to anybody, and we're losing momentum. We're losing ground. You've got to go on the offense. You've got to go on the attack. And I would have him out there attacking the crap out of Trump and Haley on a daily basis, hitting them viciously on everything. So in that regard, here we go. We're coming back, so we'll talk more after the next break.
Welcome back, everyone. So You've all spent a lot of time criticizing each other on this stage, as Governor Christie pointed out, and less so for most of you on the front runner in this race, Donald Trump. We invited him to come tonight, as you know, but he declined to come. But we'd like to ask you a couple questions about him now. Ambassador Haley, former President Trump recently promised, if he's reelected, to bring back and expand his program restricting immigration from Muslim countries. Here he is in Iowa on October 16th.
No longer will we allow dangerous lunatics, haters, bigots, and maniacs to get residency in our country. We're not going to let them stay here. If you empathize with radical Islamic terrorists and extremists, you're disqualified. You're just disqualified.
Ambassador Haley, do you support President Trump's plan for ideological screening?
Well, I don't think that you have a straight-up Muslim ban as much as you look at the countries that have terrorist activity that want to hurt Americans. You can ban those people from those countries. That's the way we should look at it, is which countries are a threat to us. You look at what came across the southern border. What worries me the most are those that came from Iran, from Yemen, from Lebanon, those areas where they say death to America. That's where you want to be careful. It's not about a religion. It's about a fact that certain countries are dangerous and are threats to us. A president has one job, and that's to keep Americans safe. And that's what we've got to do, is make sure that we have good national security in that process. And that's the way you should look at it, is where the terrorist threats are, how we're going to deal with it, and what we're doing about it. And the biggest threat we have right now is communist China. But you have to also look at what Iran and Russia are doing as well. And we need to be paying attention to that. That's why we have to focus on things like cyber, on space, on artificial intelligence, and not just the regular things that we've always focused on.
It's not just terrorism, though. That's important. But look what's happened in Europe. You have more anti-Semitism in Germany than at any time since Adolf Hitler. Why? Because they imported mass numbers of people who reject their culture. Europe is committing suicide with the mass migration, and it's illegal and legal. Nikki Haley said the other day there should be no limits on legal immigration, and that corporate CEOs should set the policy on that. There needs to be limits on immigration, and we should not be importing people from cultures that are hostile. So, for example, I said with the Gaza, you had some of the squad wanted to import 300,000 people from the Gaza Strip. I said, no, we're not taking anyone from Gaza because of the anti-Semitism and because they reject American culture. So we've got to get smart about this. We cannot let the United States be like Europe.
So there's a lower-hanging fruit here, if I may just hit this point, because it relates to what they just said. There are things that the government can do right now that nobody's talking about amongst the professional politicians in this race. What about all of the illegals who are already here? Here's the answer. There's 287G in the law. That is a provision that already allows ICE agents to deputize or allow local law enforcement to enforce those ICE warrants. And it shocks me that nobody in the Republican Party is talking about it, because there are 1 million then officials, law enforcement officials in this country. And against that backdrop, we absolutely have the ability to deport anybody who's in this country illegally.
Thank you,
we
Mr.
need to be talking about it more in this country.
Thank you. Governor Christie.
I actually did that as governor of South Carolina.
Governor Christie asked last night in Iowa whether he would be a dictator if he wins a second term in office. Donald Trump quipped, no, quote, except for day one, promising to seal the southern border. He has also pledged to begin the largest deportation operation in American history, saying that migrants are, quote, poisoning the blood of our country. He has pledged to round up and expel an estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. What do you make of that plan?
I think it's completely predictable. I mean, look, he's made it very clear. There's no mystery to what he wants to do. He started off his campaign by saying, I am your retribution. 8 years ago, he said, I am your voice. This is an angry, bitter man who now wants to be back as president because he wants to exact retribution on anyone who has disagreed with him, anyone who has tried to hold him to account for his own conduct. And every one of these policies that he's talking about are about pursuing a plan of retribution. And yet, at the first debate, my three colleagues on this stage, when asked if he would be convicted of federal felonies, would they still support him, raised their hand, looked into the camera, and let everybody know that they would still support him even if convicted of federal felonies. Federal felonies, by the way. Federal felonies which involve our election process, federal felonies which involve the most sensitive of our governmental secrets, federal felonies where he instructed others to commit crimes, folks who are now agreeing to go to jail because of what they did in his name. So do I think he was kidding when he said he was a dictator? All you have to do is look at the history. And that's why failing to speak out against him, making excuses for him, pretending that somehow he's a victim, empowers him. You want to know why those poll numbers are where they are? Because folks like these three guys on the stage make it seem like his conduct is acceptable. Let me make it clear. His conduct is unacceptable. He's unfit. And be careful of what you're going to get. If you ever got another Donald Trump term, he's letting you know, I am your retribution. He will only be, Elizabeth, he will only be his own retribution. He doesn't care for the American people. It's Donald Trump first.
Thank you, Governor Christie. Governor DeSantis. Governor DeSantis. Thank you. Governor DeSantis, Donald Trump would be older on day one of his second presidency than Joe Biden was on day one of his first. You have said Trump is not the same man he was when he ran in 2016. Your campaign is running ads showing Trump confused. And you have said he has, quote, lost the zip on his fastball. You seem to be saying Donald Trump is no longer mentally fit to be president. Is that what you think?
Look, he is showing, Father Time is undefeated. The idea that we're going to put someone up there that's almost 80 and there's going to be no effects from that, we all know that that's not true. And so we have an opportunity to do a next generation of leaders and really be able to move this country forward. We also need a president that can serve 2 terms. I don't think Donald Trump, I think he's going to have, I don't think he'd be able to get elected. The Democrats want him to be the nominee. We see that. They are going to turn the screws the minute, if he got the nomination,
but do you think he's mentally fit to be president?
I think we need to have somebody younger. I think when you get up to 80, I don't think it's a job for that. But let me just respond to some of the things there. Look, the media is making a big deal about what he said about some of these comments. I would just remind people that is not how he governed. He didn't even fire Dr. Fauci. He didn't fire Christopher Wray. He didn't clean up the swamp. He said he was going to drain it. He did not drain it. He said he was going to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it. We don't have the wall. He did say in 2016 he'd have the largest deportation program in history. He deported less than Barack Obama did when Barack Obama was president. So some of these policies he ran on in 16, I was cheering him on then, but he didn't deliver it. Here's what I can promise people. 100% of the things I promised as governor, I delivered on those promises. I beat the left time and time again, and that's what I'll do for you as president. We got to start winning again as a party. Yes, win the election, but we've got to start getting these issues. I will go in and wreak havoc on this bureaucracy. You will see people fired, and we are going to bring a reckoning for how this government handled COVID-19.
Here's what irritates Now, Chris, you've had your chance to wax eloquent on Donald Trump. You've been doing it all this whole race.
Why doesn't he just answer the question? The question was very direct. Is he fit to be president or isn't he? The rest of the speech is interesting, but completely non-responsive. And if we were in a courtroom, they'd strike the answer and say, Governor DeSantis.
No, they wouldn't. They would say that
you're a smart
would
man.
Argue that
No, they would.
No, they wouldn't.
They would
Chris.
strike the answer because you're not answering it.
You just don't
fit?
like. You
is
have
he
your.
fit?
You have
no.
your thing.
Is he fit
you
or
have
isn't
your
he?
thing.
No, I don't have my thing.
We don't.
He's the thing. Is he fit or isn't he?
Do
you're talking about him being 80 years old.
It doesn't mean that somebody couldn't get elected. That's up to the people.
Governor DeSantis, let him finish. Governor DeSantis, let him finish.
Ron,
I think we have an opportunity to do somebody who is in the prime of their life. We don't have to worry about all this stuff with confidence. We can get it done, and we'll do it.
I'm going to come to you. Finish.
Look, Father Time is undefeated. I don't know how he would score on a test, but I know this. We have an opportunity to nominate someone and elect someone for 2 terms who's going to be spitting nails on day one and for 8 years deliver you big result. We should not nominate somebody who's almost 80 years old.
Okay. He's afraid to answer.
No, I'm not.
You have to either you're afraid or you're not listening.
No, it's not.
There's a simple question.
Is he fit?
Nobody can hear this. No one can hear you. They can't hear you. You finish and then you get it back.
All right. Look, I'm a simple guy. Okay, I hear the question, and I answer it. Is he fit or isn't he? I'll concede you're fit, Ron. You're a new generation. You're 44 years old. I wish I was still 44 years old, okay?
45.
So, well, congratulations. I'd still take 45. Is he fit or isn't he? And this is the problem with my three colleagues. They're afraid to offend. And let me tell you something. If you're afraid to offend Donald Trump, then what are you going to do when you sit across from President Xi, you sit across from the Ayatollah, you sit across from Putin? You have to be willing to offend with the truth.
Okay.
And answer the question, fit or unfit?
Okay, listen.
Fit or unfit?
I promised Ron DeSantis a minute and not a full minute.
It is not about offending.
You can weigh in and then we're moving on.
It's about pointing out, do you want to elect somebody who will be older than Biden was when he went in 2021? I don't think he's as bad as Biden was at all, but I do think that over a 4-year period, it is not a job for somebody that's pushing 80. We need somebody that's younger. We need somebody that's going to be able to go in there and clean house on day one and do it for 2 terms. And I'll be able to do
Here's my issue with all 3 of my other colleagues on this debate stage, is all 3 of them have been licking Donald Trump's boots for years for money and endorsements. Ron DeSantis, you've been a great governor, but you would have never been one without actually begging Donald Trump for that endorsement.
And you attacked him in your book a year ago.
Same thing with Chris Christie as a lobbyist, begging them for COVID money for his special interests in New Jersey, prepping him for the debates last time around. These people are now Monday morning quarterbacking some decision he made. I think the real enemy is not Donald Trump. It's not even Joe Biden. It is the deep state that at least Donald Trump attempted to take on. And if you want somebody who's going to speak truth to power, then vote for somebody who's going to speak the truth to you. Why am I the only person on the stage, at least, who can say that January 6th now does look like it was an inside job? That the government lied to us for 20 years about Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11? That the Great Replacement theory is not some grand right-wing conspiracy theory, but a basic statement of the Democratic Party's platform? That the 2020 election was indeed stolen by big tech? That the 2016 election, the one that Trump won for sure, was also one that was stolen from him by the national security establishment that actually put up the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that they knew was false? There's a reason why I'm the only person on the stage who can say these things. That's what it's going to take, not people who are licking his boots one time and now Monday morning quarterbacking him and criticizing him when it's convenient.
Governor Christie. You do not favor a ban on trans medical treatments for minors, saying it's a parental rights issue. The surgeries done on minors involve cutting off body parts at a time when these kids cannot even legally smoke a cigarette. Kids who go from puberty blockers to cross-sex hormones are at a much greater likelihood of winding up sterile. How is it that you think a parent should be able to okay these surgeries, never mind the sterilization of a child? And aren't you way too out of step on this issue to be the Republican nominee?
No, I'm not. Because Republicans believe in less government, not more. In less involvement with government, not more in government involvement in people's lives. And you know what, Megyn? I trust parents. And we're out there saying that we should empower parents in education. We should empower parents to make more decisions about where their kids go to school. I agree. We should empower parents to be teaching the values that they believe in their homes without the government telling them what those values should be. And yet we want to take other parental rights away. I'm sorry. As a father of 4, I believe there is no one who loves my children more than me. There's no one who loves my children more than my wife. There's no one who cares more about their success and health in life than we do. Not some government bureaucrat, not some. You look at these jokers down in Congress. It takes them 3 weeks to pick a speaker, and up until 2 days ago, they couldn't promote somebody in the military in the United States Senate who earned their new rank. And we're going to put my children's health and my decisions in their hands? For them to make those decisions? For Joe Biden to make those decisions? For me and for my wife? Let me just say this. This is not something I favor. I think it's a very, very dangerous thing to do. But that's my opinion as a parent, Megyn. And I get to make the decisions about my children, not anybody else. And every parent out there who's watching tonight, you start to turn over just a little bit of this authority, the authority they're going to take from you next, you're not going to like. I'll stand up for parents each and every time.
So there are laws banning smoking or drinking by a certain age.
Let me tell you something. I have a follow-up question for him, and you guys are going to get to weigh in, okay? Here's my follow-up question. You talk about parental rights. Let's talk about them. When you were governor in 2017, you signed a law that required new guidelines for schools dealing with transgender students. Those guidelines required schools to accept a child's preferred gender identity, even if the minor's parents objected.
Not true.
And it said that there is no duty for schools to notify parents if their son or daughter changes their gender identity, allowing this serious issue to remain a secret between the school and a child. How is any of that pro-parental rights?
By the way, that's simply not true.
You're doing what you accuse me of, Chris. It is absolutely true.
That's simply not true. That's simply not true. That law was put into effect in 2018 and regulated in 2018 after I was out of office, Megyn. No, we did not, Megyn. We did not issue those guidelines, and you're wrong about that. Simply wrong. I have stood up each and every time.
So I think if this is one issue that's disqualifying, it's this one.
I stood up every single time for parents to be able to make the decisions for their minor children.
But parents...
Every single time, parents should make those decisions. And by the way, you know what? Every once in a while, parents are going to make decisions that we disagree with. But the minute you start to take those rights away from parents, you don't know that slippery slope, what rights are going to be taken away next, and what's going to be focused on you.
As a parent, you do not have the right to abuse your kids. This is cutting off their genitals. This is mutilating these minors. These are irreversible procedures, and this is something that other countries in Europe, like Sweden, once they started doing it, they saw it did incalculable damage. They've shut it down. I signed legislation in Florida banning the mutilation of minors because it is wrong. We cannot allow this to happen in this country. And I know Chris disagrees with me, and I think he has an honest position. Nikki disagrees with me. She opposes the bill that we did to ban that. She said the law shouldn't get involved with it. You said the law shouldn't get involved with it. She also, though, I think, and this flows from what she did as governor of South Carolina, they had a bill to try to say that men shouldn't go into girls' bathrooms. And she killed that bill, and she bragged that she killed that bill. Even to this day, she bragged that. I don't think men should be going into little girls' bathrooms. I think it's wrong, and I think we have every right to protect them from that.
I am going to come to you. I promise to have seconds. Go quickly.
I think the North Star here is transgenderism is a mental health disorder. We don't let you smoke a cigarette by the age of 18. We don't let you have an addictive drink of alcohol by the age of 21. And I just challenge Ron DeSantis to go one step further and support what I think is clearly within the authority to do, using federal funds just like Reagan did in '84 for the Highway Act that said the minimum drinking age needs to be 21. We can do the same thing when it comes to banning genital mutilation or chemical castration.
Okay.
I know Ron's been unclear about that on the federal
Haley.
level. I'm crystal clear. That's where I stand.
Got it.
That's a mental health disorder. That's where we need to be at.
Go ahead.
So first of all, Ron has continued to lie because he's losing.
No, it's not a lie.
You are lying.
You said it on tape.
So first of all, I will say that when I was governor, 10 years ago, when the bathroom situation came up, we had maybe a handful of kids that were dealing with an issue. And I said, we don't need to bring government into this, but boys go into boys' bathrooms, girls go into girls' bathrooms, and if anyone else has an issue, they use a private bathroom. Now, 10 years later, we see that this issue has exploded. And this shows how hypocritical Ron continues to be. When he was running for governor and they asked him about that, he said he didn't think bathroom bills were a good use of his time. You can go look that up.
I signed a bathroom bill in Florida, so that's obviously not true.
So the idea that you would say that I was against that.
You didn't. You killed it. I signed it. I stood up for little girls. You didn't do it. And there was this going on. I was actually just in South Carolina. Some of the legislators told me at the time there were boys going into the girls. That's the whole reason why they did it.
No.
And so they say when she does that explanation that doesn't hold water. And this is the upstate of South Carolina.
Ron,
I signed the bill. I protected the girls.
Do you know South Carolinians?
She did not do it.
Do you know South Carolinians? Because South Carolinians... No. You are not not going to talk about my state like that, because I will tell you for a fact, South Carolinians never allowed that to happen, and we did not have that issue at the time. What I have always said is boys go into a boys' bathroom, girls go into a girls' bathroom. But hold on one second. I also say that biological boys shouldn't be playing in girls' sports, and I will do everything I can to stop that, because it's the women's issue of our time.
This is nice legislation to protect women's sports. I actually get this stuff done.
You got it. Thank you, guys. We're going to move on. Mr. Ramaswamy, when discussing your Hindu faith in September, you seemed to take a shot at Ambassador Haley, who is also Indian American and who converted to Christianity as an adult. You said, an easy thing for me to do, being a politician, is to shorten my name, profess to be a Christian, and then run. Make Vivek Vicky or whatever, end quote. Are you questioning Nikki Haley's Christian convictions? And why has your campaign made a point of referring to Ambassador Haley by her given first name, Nimarata, even though she has gone by Nikki for her whole life?
Well, my whole deal is if Nikki Haley, of all people, should know how to pronounce my name correctly, the rest of the news media can learn it. My deal is I'll call her Nikki when she can say my own name right. That's our little fun side bet there. Here's what I will say is deeper. I don't question her faith, but I question her authenticity. And I think that's deeper here. We were just talking about the trans issue. This is a symptom of a deeper cancer in American life, identity politics. This new religion that says your race, your gender, and your sexuality are your identity. It is anti-American. It is meritocratic. It's anti-meritocratic, and it is dividing this country to a breaking point. And I've spoken about this to the left. My books are all about this. I've preached this to the left, but it's even worse when Republicans try to play the same game. We're talking about that trans issue. And Nikki Haley's campaign launch video sounded like a woke Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light ad talking about how she would kick in heels. At the first debate, she said that only a woman can get this job done. That's what she said. After the third debate, when I criticized Ronna McDaniel after 5 failed years of leadership of this party and criticized Nikki for her corrupt foreign dealings as a military contractor, she said that I have a woman problem. Nikki, I don't have a woman problem. You have a corruption problem. And I think that that's what people need to know. Nikki is corrupt. This is a woman who will send your kids to die so she can buy a bigger house. This is the problem. Using identity politics more effectively than Kamala Harris is a form of intellectual fraud. And it actually needs to end. There's our donor puppet masters wielding their puppet right up here tonight. This is how this game is played. The puppet masters put up their puppet, and I reject the use of identity politics in this party. It has been a cancer coming from the left, and I'm sick and tired of the double standards. The people of this country are too. Having 2 X chromosomes does not immunize you from criticism.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Governor Haley, would you like to respond?
No. It's not worth my time to respond to him.
You have been using identity politics at every step. She knows it's true, and that's why she's actually fighting from it.
Sir, we're not going to give you a response to the question that was to you.
Okay, we got to move on to this. Now, by arrangement with the Republican National Committee, we've got 2 questions for you about the Justice Department and our election system. Here's Tom Fitton with Judicial Watch. Governor Christie, this one's for you.
President Trump and many of his supporters claim federal law enforcement agencies have abused his civil rights for the last 8 years by, among other things, spying on him and now prosecuting him while having treated Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden with kid gloves. A recent Gallup poll shows that Americans think more highly of the U.S. Postal Service than they do the FBI or Justice Department. What would you do as president to restore the faith of the American people in these agencies?
Well, first off, I'm the only person on this stage who's actually done a job in the Department of Justice. I was the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey in the 5th largest office in this country, appointed by President Bush on September 10th, 2001. And it was an extraordinary time in this country to be on the front lines of fighting the greatest attack against our country since Pearl Harbor. And I'm proud of the 7 years I spent in the Justice Department. And one of the reasons I am is because I had an Attorney General when I came in named John Ashcroft. And John Ashcroft stood up and told each and every one of us our job was to do one thing, to make sure justice was done every day, regardless of partisanship, regardless of gender or race or any other consideration. And that's what we did for 7 years. And at a time when our country was at its greatest moment of danger in the last 40 years, We did exactly that, and there was not another domestic terrorist attack on this soil. So what I would do as president, having had that experience, and the only one who's had that experience, is to pick an attorney general who will absolutely do the same thing that John Ashcroft did, to pick U.S. attorneys who will only care about making sure that justice is done without regard to any other consideration but the facts that are presented and whether someone is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt and the government can prove it. We have had attorneys general like Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch and Jeff Sessions, and now our current attorney general, who have not met that standard. And the only way you restore people's faith in the justice system is to put someone like that in charge of the Justice Department, and then as president, to get the hell out of the way on anything that involves criminal investigations. If a president's involved in trying to do something and put their thumb on the scale, as Donald Trump says he will do, that makes people much less likely to believe our justice system can be fair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Governor DeSantis, this next one's for you. Back to Tom Fitton.
Many Republicans are concerned about the legitimacy of elections. A federal judge just ruled that Pennsylvania must count undated mail-in ballots, and unlike Alabama, many states still don't require any identification to vote. What should states do now to increase election integrity?
We're having some buffering here.
Mail balloting and no ballot harvesting. We even have an agency that prosecutes people for violating election laws. The result of that, in both 2020 and 2022, we counted millions and millions of votes on election night, produced the results, it was transparent, and everybody was happy. That is not happening throughout this country. But let me tell you this as the nominee. I think it's important. Not every state's where we need it to be. There is ballot harvesting in places like Nevada, all these places. I am not going to fight with one hand tied behind my back. I'm going to have organizations in all the swing states. If they're harvesting, we're harvesting. If they're Zuckerbucks, we're Zuckerbucks. We are going to exploit whatever the rules are. I favor changing the rules to be like Florida and some of the other states that have done a good job. But until then, we have to do that. And then just on the Justice Department and FBI. I mean, I remember being, in Iraq working with FBI on the ground and being, and then I was a special assistant. I used to have such a high regard for these agencies. What they did to Donald Trump with the Russia collusion was one of the biggest abuses of power in the history of our country. These agencies need to be cleaned out. With me, you'll have a new FBI director on day one. We're going to clear out the DOJ, the IRS, all these places. Buckle your seatbelts. There's going to be a new sheriff in town.
Thank you. All right, we got to do a quick break. We're going to come back in 1 minute. China up next.
All right, so sorry for those technical difficulties. That was not on my end. That was on their end, so I'm not sure what that was. But there's a lot to unpack with that last segment, and I guess I'll start with the whole gender mutilation for children and how Chris Christie is totally out of line with the rest of the Republican Party, and to be quite honest, the majority of independents, because they agree with us on this issue overwhelmingly. So, straight up, it should be illegal. It's child abuse. Don't tell me about how the Republican Party's for civil liberties and individual freedom, small government. That does not excuse child abuse. So what are we going to say next? That we should just allow murder to be legal because we don't want to got too much government regulation? No, that's not how things work. So if you have a kid who's 12 years old, keep in mind your frontal lobe and your brain don't fully develop till around 21 is when your frontal lobe is developed, and then the brain keeps going in development till age 25. But so let's say you have a 12-year-old kid who thinks that they want to transition to a different gender, and you have some woke parents that allow them to go through with it. Well, when they grow up, they're going to realize, man, this was a huge mistake. I should have never done this. How stupid. Then they're going to have irreversible damage, lifelong damage, and they'll never be the same, and they'll never be able to go back on it. It's like if you have kids and you claim you want to make them happy, so you let them eat candy for every meal. And then they grow up and get diabetes. All their teeth fall out. So no, that is not what you do as a responsible parent. You have to draw the line with your kids and say, no, that is not good for you. I'm not allowing you to do that. And if there are cases in which parents can't figure that out on their own, then yeah, it needs to be illegal. The government needs to get involved and pass regulation to stop irresponsible parents from doing that to a child. I don't care what anybody says. That's the way it should be. And the fact that Chris Christie just went out and said that it's no big deal and parents should be able to determine that, as far as I'm concerned, he is disqualified from this race. Neocon, what did you think?
Well, I think that with Chris Christie's belief of what you call compassionate conservatism, it doesn't work anymore. You cannot be compassionate to people, to a party that has literally embraced far-left ideology as its creed, particularly with that issue you just talked about, child genital mutilation. Look, I've had friends that are trans. I'm empathetic with them, but no child should go through these procedures or through hormone therapy or whatever. That makes no sense. Kids can't smoke a cigarette till they're 18. They can't drink till they're 21. Why is it somehow we think that we can then put irreversible surgeries and procedures on them and think that that's okay? And the fact of the matter is that most of these kids, I would argue, are not this way. They have been ingrained this way by teachers, by even parents who are trying to make these kids into their ideological cultural war pet projects. It has nothing to do, by and large, I would say, vast majority of these kids don't make these decisions because this is what they want. They've been ingrained to think this is what they want by people who have an ideological bent to turn them this way. And that is absolutely dangerous that we're doing this to kids. And it's going to have lifelong repercussions. And the federal government has to be involved to step in and say no. If you're not 18 years old or 21, I don't know what it should be. It should at least say that if you're under 18 years old, you can't go through with this, even if your parents consent to it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that was a pretty long segment. We had a lot of stuff going on in there. So Chris Christie came out swinging against Trump, and I thought he was making good points with how the other three are kissing Trump's ass, and they won't attack him. But I feel like Vivek got the better of him, and we'll talk about it after this segment.
Welcome back to the final GOP presidential primary debate of 2023. We're going to talk about our college campuses, starting with you, Ambassador Haley. House Republicans yesterday hauled elite university presidents up to Capitol Hill to answer for the displays of anti-Semitism on college campuses. These leaders, including the president of Harvard, were asked whether calling for the genocide of the Jews would violate school policies against harassment and intimidation. All of them said it would depend on the context, including whether that speech veers into conduct. How do you think these schools and the rest of society should balance the imperative of free speech against the need to prevent radical activists from harassing and intimidating others?
It was disgusting to see what happened. If this had been the KKK that was doing protests on those campuses, every one of those college presidents would have been up in arms. This is just as bad. The idea that they would go and allow that kind of pro-Hamas protest or agree with the genocide of Jews and try and say that they needed context on that, there is no context to that. This is what we need to do to deal with it. First of all, we have got to get foreign money out of our universities. You've got Arab money, you've got Chinese money, you've got others. We need to go to every university and say, you either take foreign money or you take American money, but the days of taking both are over. The second thing we need to do is Biden made a mistake not including anti-Zionism in the definition of anti-Semitism. If you don't think that Israel has a right to exist, that is anti-Semitic. We will change the definition so that every government, every school has to acknowledge the definition for what it is. The third thing is we really do need to ban TikTok once and for all. And let me tell you why. For every 30 minutes that someone watches TikTok, every day, they become 17% more anti-Semitic, more pro-Hamas based on doing that. We now know that 50% of adults 18 to 25 think that Hamas was warranted in what they did with Israel. That's a problem. When campuses also don't go and protect when they have these rallies and you've got students that are scared, we need to go to these universities and say, if you're not going to protect these students, if you're not going to acknowledge anti-Semitism, we'll take your tax-exempt status away. That'll fix it, and that'll take care of it for good.
Staying with you, Ambassador Haley. On October 6th, the Israeli government thought it had a clear-eyed view of the threat from Hamas. In fact, according to the New York Times, it even had Hamas's attack plan and dismissed it as an aspiration. The Israelis were wrong. In our country, the FBI director told the Senate panel just yesterday that he sees, quote, blinking red lights everywhere, and that the threat level has, quote, gone to a whole nother level since October 7th. Which of the threats facing our country do you worry could blindside us?
What worries me and what keeps me up at night is what happens between now and Election Day while Joe Biden's in office. That's what worries me more than anything else. But I'll tell you that America right now is acting like it's September 10th. We better remember what September 12th felt like, because it only takes one. And whether you're looking at open borders that are allowing people to come in, Iran knows the easiest way to get to America is through the southern border, and we're not doing anything to stop it. We've got to get the foreign infiltration out of our country, whether it's in our schools, whether it's on our social media, whether it's we need to stop all foreign lobbying that's happening to members of Congress, and we need to start securing America again. Until we do that, we are going to be at threats. We've got to look at Iran, China, and Russia want to destroy the West. We have to start acting strong again. We've got to start protecting Americans. Right now, Americans don't feel protected, and we're not doing anything to strengthen it. So Joe Biden continues to be a problem. That'll change on Election Day.
Governor DeSantis, if China invades Taiwan, would you send American troops, as President Biden has said he would do?
We will be able to deter that from happening. I think that's the important thing. We need a strategy of denial so that we're deterring Xi's ambitions.
What if it doesn't work?
It's going to work. Taiwan's an ally. We have longstanding American policy, and you know how that's done, and we will follow that. But here's the thing. Taiwan is important not just because of semiconductors. It's important because if China is able to break out of this first island chain, they're going to be able to dominate commerce in the entire Indo-Pacific. They will use that to export authoritarianism all around the world, including here in the United States. You look at some of these guys, actually some of them that are supporting Nikki on Wall Street, they grovel to China. Anytime something happens, they got to go do that. So they already exert a huge amount of authority over this country. It will get a lot worse. So deterring China's ambitions is the #1 national security task that I will do as president, and we will succeed. The 21st century needs to be an American century. We cannot let it be a Chinese century.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
I think we need to be clear. I'll be clear on the same issue, if I may.
I'm coming to you next on Taiwan. You said if you want to stop Xi from invading Taiwan, quote, let's open a branch of the NRA in Taiwan and put an AR-15 in the hands of every family and train them how to use it. That will give Xi a taste of American exceptionalism, end quote. The National Police in Taiwan announced a zero-gun policy last year. Is this a serious policy proposal? And if it isn't, why do you keep repeating it?
Well, it's part of a broader deterrence strategy. And so I think I'm going to respectfully disagree with Ron here. I think the next U.S. president needs to be crystal clear that at least for the foreseeable future, the U.S. will absolutely defend Taiwan. And it is with that clarity that we actually achieve deterrence. But I have a broader strategy than that. We need to get on side in our relationship with India, take it to the next level. India has to be able to block the Andaman Sea, which is where China gets most of its Middle Eastern oil supplies. That's critical. I also do believe the Second Amendment is a critical way of preventing foreign autocrats from being able to. It's worked in America. Why wouldn't it work in Taiwan? So it is part of a broader strategy. But I do think that we need to be specific about our deterrence strategy, or else Xi Jinping is just encroaching by the day. And the reason why we're not doing it for China, I want to be crystal clear, is because we're scared. Why are we scared? Because we depend on them for our modern way of life. Why do we depend on them for our modern way of life? It's because Nikki Haley's latest friends like Larry Fink have created commingled economies with BlackRock telling Exxon and Chevron they can't drill here, while being a shareholder of PetroChina, not applying those same constraints in China. So it is our economic dependence on China that makes us scared. If that were a Russian spy balloon, we'd have shot it down in an instant. If that were a Russian spy base in Cuba, we'd be actually going hard on them instead of turning the other way as we are with China. So it comes back down to that economic dependence. We cannot depend on them for our pharmaceuticals, our semiconductors, and people have been lied to for a long time. Our own military, the F-35 jets that we make in this country, depend on China, and it's going to take an outsider to fix that broken establishment.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. Ambassador Haley, would you like to respond?
I mean, when it comes to China and Taiwan, the one way that we keep China from going into Taiwan is, one, make sure that we win in Ukraine, that we protect our friends, but also let China know that they'll be hell to pay if they go into Taiwan. They need to know that there is going to be a force that's going to go against them. And they need to know it's not just going to be the United States. That is why we need to build our partnerships with India, with South Korea, with Japan, with the Philippines, with Australia. We need to start pulling that alliance together. And the first way we do that is we need to make sure that on day one we look at the fact, if China pulled the rug out from under us tomorrow, would we be ready? Think about what happened during COVID. Everybody told you to wear a mask. They were made in China. Everybody told you to take a COVID test. They were made in China. Everybody went and, I mean, everything that happened, if you go to the drugstore, all those medicines are made in China. We have to make sure that we are not relying on China for anything related to our national security, which means let's start focusing on doing deals with our friends now.
Thank you, Ambassador. Governor Christie, I'd like you to weigh in on that. And do you think arming every family in Taiwan with an AR-15 is a plausible policy?
You know, I don't think we have constitutional authority over Taiwan to give them a Second Amendment. I think they can only do that for themselves. But look, I want to be really clear. Once again, I want to play the role of actually answering your question, which is if China went after Taiwan, you're absolutely right. I would, as president, have us go militarily and defend them. Secondly, I'm not afraid, based upon those economic relationships, to do that, because these economic relationships mean nothing. Nothing. If what's going to happen is that China is going to come and act in that region of the world however they see fit. It's not right. And I'll say this about what I heard from Nikki earlier. She said that Donald Trump was good on trade. He wasn't. And the proof that he wasn't good on trade with China is that all he did was impose tariffs, which raised the prices for every American. You want to know what has contributed to inflation in this country? Yes, it's more government spending. Yes, it's the fact that we're printing too much money. Absolutely. But it is also the increase in prices that were driven by Donald Trump's tariffs. And one last thing. You can't say he was good on trade because he didn't change one Chinese policy in the process. He failed on it.
Thank you, Governor Christie. Governor DeSantis, switching subjects here. For 15 years, Republicans have been burned by politicians' promises to repeal Obamacare. Trump repeatedly promised to replace it with, quote, something terrific, but failed to propose anything. You're now promising something better. But Florida has more uninsured people than almost any other state. Why should Americans trust you more than any other Republicans who've disappointed them on this issue?
Well, I think we have millions of Americans who do not have access to affordable health care. And it's not just getting some type of card and Medicaid, because a lot of times they don't even get access to doctors. Do you actually get access to care? The other thing is we have millions and millions of people who don't have access to good doctors and good hospitals. Florida did not expand Obamacare. I think the states that did that, I think, are struggling financially. So that, yes, we declined to do that, and I don't think that that was the right policy to do. But we are going to go after the cost. You're paying too much for everything. We've actually addressed this in Florida in some ways, but you need price transparency. You need to hold the pharmaceuticals accountable. You need to hold big insurance and big government accountable, and we're going to get that done. I think it's very, very important economically. I think it's very, very important for the country that we get that done.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to, this is a very personal issue to our family. I wanted to take actually a minute to recognize my wife who's here today. Badass surgeon. She did a bunch of cases with cancer survivors earlier today, flew here to be tonight. We'll be back at 7 a.m. in Columbus, Ohio tomorrow, taking care of those patients in the OR. And on the front lines of people who have actually not swallowed for years. And here's something that's awful that's happening in our healthcare system. They'll pay for anything like feeding tubes, doctors to be pill pushers, But for the procedures that can actually make these patients better, we have a broken healthcare system that doesn't pay for it. My wife, Apoorva, in many cases, does not get paid for those procedures. She does them anyway because it's the right thing to do. But that does not work system-wide. So here's the answer. We don't have a healthcare system in this country. We have a sick care system. We need to start having diverse insurance options in a competitive marketplace that cover actual health, preventative medicine, diet, exercise, lifestyle, and otherwise. And here's how we deliver that. End the antitrust exemptions for health insurance companies. That's where the competitive marketplace begins. That's crony capitalism, and that's the answer.
Okay, through Operation Warp Speed, the Trump administration and private industry developed a COVID vaccine in record time. The program protected the drug companies from virtually all lawsuits over vaccine injuries. The government has a program to compensate for such harm, but critics say it is a black hole of bureaucracy. 12,000 claims filed, 10% decided, only 8 payouts so far, in a forum with no right to counsel, no hearings, no appeals. Mr. Trump says he's very proud of Warp Speed. Should he be?
Well, this question specifically on liability goes back to actually Reagan. And Reagan is a president who I admire. Many of us do. I think that reviving that spirit is in many ways going to be good for this country in so many ways. But one of the areas where he erred was this special form of lobbying to say that one kind of manufacturer, a vaccine manufacturer, cannot be sued for their product liability. So I have pledged, it is part of my legislative agenda, we will repeal that, just like we will repeal every other form of crony capitalism. People who have been harmed by those vaccines deserve accountability. They cannot be forgotten Americans. And I think one of the top lessons we learned from that COVID pandemic is that free speech in this country is most important in those alleged times of emergency. If we had been allowed to openly debate the merits of those vaccines, they would have been never mandated in the way that they were. And in general, I don't think that we should want capitalism and democracy to share the same bed anymore. It's time for a clean divorce. Let companies be companies, but I don't like the crony capitalism. This dates back a long time in both parties. And I think that we need to end the lobbying. And I personally believe that if you have been working in the government, you should not lobby that government for 10 years. If you have been a government elected official doing deals with companies, be they Boeing or be they pharmaceutical companies, you should not join the board of that company for 10 years after. The former chairman of the FDA, the leader commissioner of the FDA, ended up on the board of Pfizer. Nikki Haley did deals with Boeing, ends up on the board of Boeing. I don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat. We need some basic principles that end the corruption in government. That's how we got the health insurance exemptions. That's how we got the pharmaceutical product liability exemptions. We end the corruption.
We need a reckoning for what this government did during COVID-19. That includes the mRNA shots. They put it out. It was experimental. People wanted it. Then the government started trying to mandate it, to say you don't have a right to put food on your table if you don't take an mRNA shot that was under emergency use. They tried to take nurses away. Now, in Florida, we blocked that. We provided protections for everybody so that they wouldn't lose their job. You also have the FDA approving an mRNA shot for 6-month-old babies. There was no data to support that. They're doing it because big pharma will make money. So I'm going to go in there, CDC, NIH, FDA. We're going to clean house. There's going to be a reckoning because right now nobody's been held accountable for any of the damage. And they're going to try to do it again. When I'm president, this will never happen to our country ever again.
Thank you, Governor DeSantis. And we will be right back in just a few moments for our closing statements from our 4 candidates at the Republican primary.
Wow, man. It's the 2 hours has gone by pretty quick. All right, so we got cut off in that last segment. So, Neocon, thoughts?
Well, I would say that it's important to talk about the, free speech issues and stuff like that. Granted, I'm not a free speech absolutist, but I think that there was some conversation on that. Ron DeSantis did well. Vivek did better, but he kind of needed to beat both Haley and DeSantis. And the problem is that he clearly has not beat DeSantis, and he also has not been able to outperform Haley. So he's kind of the fact of the matter is that I don't see in this debate where he needed to beat both, and Haley needed to beat Ron DeSantis, and While she has certainly held her own, Ron DeSantis was obviously going to attack her. Vivek was obviously going to attack her. She couldn't just hold her own. She had to beat Ron. And I don't think she has. Chris Christie had the hardest issue. He had to beat everyone. And I think, like you highlighted earlier, that some of his responses, yes, were solid, but you also highlighted the response where he talked about gender transition surgeries among minors. I think that his answer to that question, which was, well, you don't want the government getting involved in these questions, when the government is trying to get involved currently in mandating and saying that you have to accept this or else, I think the fact of the matter is that he may have inadvertently tanked his campaign right then and there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, nothing was going to happen anyways. His only long shot was in New Hampshire, and he's really only in third there. And so I really don't think he's going to win anywhere else. But in terms of who I think is winning and losing here, I would definitely say right now, we haven't seen their closing arguments, but right now with 90% of the debate over with, I'm going to say Vivek and DeSantis are the winners tonight. They have both had really good moments. DeSantis had good moments on the whole gender mutilation thing. He had a good segment just now on the COVID vaccines, which were just what they did, making people get those vaccines. There needs to be some legal repercussions for what happened with that, because people were forced to get vaccines, and it was just disgusting. I'm not somebody who believes in vaccine conspiracies or whatever, but if somebody doesn't want to take it, they should not have to be forced to do it for their job. I'm one of the people that was forced to get it for my job. And this was a job I couldn't quit. I'm in the military, so I was forced to get the vaccine, and I couldn't just quit my job. So I was pretty much physically forced to get it. But that's another tangent that we can go into after the debate. Vivek has had really good moments on the corruption, making himself the outsider, calling out Nikki Haley on her ties to Boeing, and DeSantis and Vivek teaming up is what it seems like against Haley to take her down and to throw a monkey wrench into her momentum. I feel like that's been very effective. It was smart on both of their parts to team up. I'm not saying it was like planned or coordinated, but obviously they both went in with the plan to take her down, and they've done pretty good. I don't think Haley's had any major hiccups like what Christie had, but I feel like she's kind of just lukewarm milquetoast. She's not really rocking the boat tonight. So I wouldn't say she's the big loser, but she's definitely not winning this debate like she quote unquote won the first three. And then Christie had a good start. He was coming off aggressive, and then he had that whole thing with the trans. And then, they haven't really talked to him much tonight. So that's really going to be the standout moment for him after this debate, was that comment, because he hasn't really been given much attention tonight. And here we go. We'll discuss after the debate.
Welcome back to the News Nation Republican primary debate here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We're going to do one final question before closing statements, and we want to get you all in, so we're going to give you 45 seconds for this last one. Governor Christie, we're going to start with you. Which former president would you draw inspiration from for your own presidency, and why?
George H.W. Bush. I would draw inspiration from Ronald Reagan. In the last year, I've spent a lot of time writing a book about President Reagan that's going to be called What Would Reagan Do? That book's going to come out early in 2024. And what I learned more than anything else was that Ronald Reagan was a slave to the truth. Ronald Reagan stood up for the truth, whether it was popular or unpopular at the moment. In 1964, he stood up against the John Birch Society when it was very unpopular to the party to do it, but he would not put up with our party standing for lies and deceit, even if it gave him political progress. That's the kind of president that I will be, and I would draw that inspiration from the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan.
Ambassador Haley?
Well, I have to say, too, I think George Washington, when you look at the responsibilities he had of how do you go and take on this great American experiment, and make sure that the people are protected. And they always knew that government was intended to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. It was never meant to be all things to all people. And then you look at Abraham Lincoln, and you look at the challenges, and you look at the division that happened in our country, and the ability to lead in spite of the loud noises and say, what will bring out the best in people to get us to go forward is always something that's important. And I think we need that now more than ever.
Governor DeSantis.
Reagan, Washington, Lincoln, excellent. One of the guys I'll take inspiration from is Calvin Coolidge. Now, people don't talk about him a lot. He's one of the few presidents that got almost everything right. He understood the proper role of the federal government under the Constitution. We need to restore the U.S. Constitution as the centerpiece of our national life. And that requires a president who understands the original understanding of the Constitution, who has a good sense of the Bill of Rights, and who knows how we've gone off track with this massive fourth branch of government, this administrative state, which is imposing its will on us and is being weaponized against us. So Silent Cal knew the proper role of the federal government. The country was in great shape when he was president of the United States, and we can learn an awful lot from Calvin Coolidge.
Over to you, Mr. Ramaswamy, to conclude our history lesson.
Sure. Well, I will say Ron picked a president who was born on July 4th. I'll pick one who died on July 4th. It's Thomas Jefferson. He was 33 years old when he wrote the Declaration of Independence, and you all are sitting on a swivel chair today. He invented the swivel chair while he was at it, while writing that Declaration of Independence. That's that founding spirit that we miss, that we're the pioneers, we're the explorers, the guy who sent him out on the Lewis and Clark expeditions. And I think a lot about what would Thomas Jefferson say to today's Republican Party. And I think one thing he'd remind us of, we haven't talked about it as much tonight, but I think it is one of the interesting ideological discussions we're having in our party is freedom of speech. You get to express your mind freely no matter how heinous the opinion. Thomas Jefferson understood that.
All
He's
right.
an inspiration for me.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. And believe it or not, it's time for closing statements. Governor Christie, would you like to begin?
Sure, thank you. I want you all to kind of picture in your minds Election Day. You'll all be heading to the polls to vote, and that's something that Donald Trump will not be able to do because he will be convicted of felonies before then, and his right to vote will be taken away. You know, look, here's the bottom line. You can boo about it all you like and continue to deny reality. But if we deny reality as a party, we're going to have 4 more years of Joe Biden. When my colleagues here raised their hands and said they would support him even if he was a convicted felon, the bigger problem with it is they were confirming the lies he's told to the American people. If you're too timid to take on Trump, believe me, others will see that timidity. Xi, Putin, and the Ayatollah, the border crossers on the southern border, and the criminals in our streets. They'll sense that timidity, and they'll take advantage of that failure of leadership. We need to get back to an old American idea that every person is responsible for their own conduct, even a president. I'll be the kind of president who has the humility that knows that you work for the people. It's not the other way around. I will earn your trust. I want to earn your vote.
Thank you, Governor Christie. Mr. Ramaswamy?
I'll use this to just address a topic we didn't talk about tonight, but I think is one of the most important topics that needs to be discussed. That is this climate change agenda that is shackling this country like a set of handcuffs. I said it at the first debate, and I stand by it. The climate change agenda is a hoax because it has nothing to do with the climate. That's what we have to see. 98% reduction in the climate disaster-related deaths in the last century. 8 times as many people are going to die of cold temperatures this year than warm ones. Yet against that backdrop, there's an issue coming up in Iowa. It's core to Iowa farmers. I met Kim Junker, Kathy Stockdale, and other farmers who are about to have a carbon capture pipeline built across their land using eminent domain to do it. That's unconstitutional and it's wrong. And if you thought COVID was bad, what's coming with this climate agenda is far worse. We should not be bending the knee to this new religion. That is what it is. It is a substitute for a modern religion. We are flogging ourselves and losing our modern way of life, bowing to this new god of climate, and that will end on my watch.
Thank you,
the most critical
Ambassador
issue
Haley.
that's coming up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our country is in chaos. We see it on the southern border. We see it on our streets in our cities. We see it on college campuses. We feel it with our economy, with inflation and with debt. and we feel it around the world with wars in Europe and within the Middle East. We have to stop the chaos, but you can't defeat Democrat chaos with Republican chaos. And that's what Donald Trump gives us. My approach is different. No drama, no vendettas, no whining. I envision an America where we're protected from illegal immigration and Chinese infiltration. I envision an America where we unleash our economy and we reject socialism. But more importantly, I envision an America where we rediscover our national purpose and our pride.
Thank you.
I crushed Joe Biden in the polls. And if you give me this chance, we will crush him in November and take our country back.
Governor.
Go to Nikki
Thank
Haley.
you, Ambassador Haley. Governor DeSantis.
We are in jeopardy of being the first generation of Americans to leave to our kids and grandkids an America less prosperous and less free than the one we inherited. I refuse to sit idly by and let that happen. But we got to have people that are going to be willing to fight the people that are doing this to us. You can't be these establishment Republicans that just cave at the first sign of opposition. I'll fight for you. We also need to win again as a party. Yes, win the election, which we've struggled to do, but also win on these big issues. And nobody has defeated these people more than what I have done in the state of Florida on issue after issue. We have won, and we have won big, and that's what we'll do for you. We also need leadership. Leadership is not about doing what's easy. It's about being willing to set out that vision, knowing they're going to shoot arrows at you. They're going to come at you. I will fight the good fight. I will keep the faith, and I will finish the race. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, all of you. Thanks to all of you. Thanks for watching. Thank you, guys.
All right. Well, that's a wrap on the fourth and final primary debate of 2023. So I think now we can give our full analysis without being interrupted.
And just like that, the state of the race has...
All right, so I'll let you get us started, Neo. Hello?
Yep. So, my thoughts on that closing right there. Well, Christie made his point. He's the anti-Trump Republican, and he wants to essentially make his claim at that. But whether he was able to present himself tonight as not simply a viable Trump alternative, but also a conservative person to win the nomination, I don't think that he successfully made that. Nikki Haley needed to really upend Ron DeSantis. It was kind of hard for her because both Vivek and Ron DeSantis, for different reasons, Ron wanted to maintain his number one place while Vivek wanted to supplant both Ron and Nikki. Unfortunately for Haley, she needed to beat Ron DeSantis, and it doesn't look like she has. And Vivek, yes, he had some good points at times, but he also, even though he might have tied with Nikki Haley in this debate, he couldn't just tie or beat Nikki Haley. He had to beat both Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, and he hasn't done that. Ron DeSantis, I was very impressed with him. I was worried that he was going to do what he did in the past three debates, which was make good points but never really follow up on them. This time, Ron DeSantis really showed that fighting spirit that he needed to say that I'm the candidate who can not only beat Trump, I'm the candidate who can beat Joe Biden, and I'm the best conservative here on the stage for your vote. And I was very impressed with him compared to the third debate where I thought it was just not really good. This time, he really showed himself.
Yeah, I think DeSantis did a lot better tonight than he has in the last few debates. So ultimately, we won't really get a sense of who won until tomorrow. The New York Times always releases their little projection model on who won, so I usually always check that the next day. But I'll go ahead and do my ranking. So DeSantis, number 1, Vivek, number 2, Haley number 3, and then Christie number 4. Now, in terms of, do I think this is going to give anybody a bump or a fall in the polls? No, I don't. I really don't think these debates really changed the polling a whole lot. They didn't really change. The only changes that really happened after the last 3 were Haley got a couple more percentage points, and then Trump got more percentage points. So these debates have only been helping Trump and Haley, and she didn't do well tonight, I don't think. So really, I don't think this is going to change much. I assume this debate got the least amount of ratings since it's the 4th one, and people are getting less and less interested as they go on. And this debate was on NewsNation. It wasn't on the mainstream channels, so I assume a lot less people saw this, which is not good for the candidates because they were going to get more airtime, but there's less people watching. And I think we will have one more debate before the Iowa caucus. Maybe even like a week before, we'll get one more. I mean, it would just make sense because we still have a little over a month before the voting starts. And so I guess I could lay out my predictions for that. I assume the polling for this debate was 6%. You had to have 6% in a national poll and then 2 state polls. I assume that'll be bumped up to around 8%. And from there, we'll definitely lose Chris Christie. He barely scraped by this time. He won't do it again. Unless, I guess, he has a breakthrough moment from here in the next month, which I don't see. So I could definitely see us having a debate like a week before the Iowa caucus between Vivek, Haley, and DeSantis. And that one might actually get a decent amount of viewership just because going into the Iowa caucus, that's when everyone's going to start paying attention. We're going into the Christmas holiday season. We haven't got to the New Year yet, but I feel like as soon as we turn that corner, then people's light bulbs will go on and everybody will start paying attention. And that's when we might start seeing a shift a bit in the polls. I mean, I'm somebody that checks the polls every day, and I can tell you I'm really bored with the polls right now because they don't move at all. Trump is killing everybody. But I think as we get closer to the election, the numbers are going to narrow a little bit. But as of now, this debate didn't change anything for me. I'm still, Trump's my guy. He's my number one. If something were to happen to Trump, I would say as of now, DeSantis is my go-to guy. And then Vivek. And then honestly, I couldn't vote for Nikki Haley. I just couldn't. She's corrupt. She's a warmonger. She's two-faced. She flip-flops on everything. So I could never vote for somebody like her. At one point, I was considering Chris Christie as a viable candidate because I do like that he'll tell it how it is. He doesn't sugarcoat stuff. He answers questions, and I do agree with a lot of his policies. I agree with his stance on wanting to use more nuclear energy. I agree with his ideas to reform Social Security. I agree with not raising taxes, wanting to balance the budget. He's got a lot of traditional conservative positions. So in the beginning, I was considering. I mean, I didn't like that he's constantly talking about Trump, but I did like a lot of what he had to say. But I can say now that I just cannot. I would not be able to throw my support behind him in a primary. I might. I mean, we can't have Joe Biden. So if he somehow were the nominee, I would obviously have to vote for him. But he's just not conservative enough for me. He's just not. He's wrong on a lot of the social issues. It's not even just what we had in the debate tonight. He's wrong on a number of issues. He thinks that it's no big deal for men to use the women's bathroom. He thinks it's okay for men to play in women's sports. He's consistently, siding with the left on these cultural issues to try and get some appeasement. And I just can't support that. So really, that's really where I stand right now. So, I mean, well, I see you're putting something in the chat. So, Neocon, what's your takeaway from the debate? Can you give us a ranking and who you have to pick one. So, as of today, I mean, let's say you live in Iowa and you're going to caucus next month. Who is your number one candidate as of right now?
My number one candidate would be Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is a cultural conservative and a strong person who is the viable alternative to Trump that can also beat Joe Biden. I rank him as my choice. As for the debate, Ron DeSantis clearly number one. Vivek and Haley tie at number two for me, and Chris Christie lost. He is a third, but if I could give him a fourth, I would. I don't like Vivek. I won't vote for him even if he wins the nomination. I believe he is a Democratic infiltrator. He is a fifth column isolationist. It's one thing to criticize the Iraq War I would disagree with anyone who criticizes the Iraq War, but at least you can have a debate on that. For him to actually have gone previously on record and criticize, Afghanistan and Vietnam, particularly when there is a huge voting base Republicans, who are Vietnam veterans who vote Republican, it's automatically disqualifying. I would never vote for him. Nikki Haley, I've already made a video why I don't feel she should be the nominee. But I feel that if she wins, I will support her, I'll canvass for her, I'll back her, in the same way that I would do the same thing for Chris Christie if he won, because the Joe Biden is the alternative. Ron DeSantis clearly, though, comes to me across as the one who is best, because, one, he can bring Reagan conservatives to the ballot box. He can bring traditional conservatives to the ballot box. He will bring all the Conservative Party, Republicans in general, to the ballot box, and he can win enough independents to beat Joe Biden in a general. And I firmly believe that I agree with Chris Christie. Donald Trump is looking at a conviction and probably will get one, and so at that, I believe that Ron DeSantis is the best person for the Republican Party who can not just deliver, but also has a record of showing that he can deliver.
All right, so you said that you would support DeSantis, you would support Haley if she was the nominee, you would support Christie. You said you would not support Vivek if he was the nominee. Well, let's address the most likely scenario. Are you going to show up on Election Day in November 2024 when Trump is the candidate?
Well, I disagree that he will be the nominee. Here's my answer to that question. The answer is yes, if he is not convicted. If he is currently in his trials where he is literally not being sued, not just being sued, but he's also currently facing indictment. If he gets convicted, no, I will not vote for him. And I think it would be embarrassing if the Republican Party stuck with him if he gets convicted. Because if he gets convicted and we stick with him as the nominee, it would ruin our chances. We wouldn't win because independents who will decide the 2024 election would overwhelmingly vote against us. So no, if he's convicted, I won't. If he is acquitted, if he in his criminal trials is found not guilty, and people will argue even then, he's still guilty, he's guilty even if the jury didn't say it, I will respect the jury's decision either way. If he is not convicted, then yes, I will vote for him. Donald Trump has a lot of faults, but the alternative is Joe Biden. And if Joe Biden wins the presidency, which would embolden the socialists, the regressive progressives, because remember, they've all backed Joe Biden wholeheartedly. And if you've read the book, Lucky, how Joe Biden barely won the presidency, the Joe Biden campaign and people went immediately after the Bernie Sanders people to get them on board. So there is a clear alliance between Joe Biden's department and regressive progressives, democratic socialists, etc. So if he's acquitted, yes, I will vote for him. If he's convicted, no.
Yeah, if So Biden has to be stopped at all costs. If Biden gets reelected and he comes in with a Democratic House, which is not out of the question, there's about 10 or so seats that are going to decide the House, and if he comes in with a Democratic Senate, what they're going to do in this next term is they will do away with the filibuster in the Senate, and then they will light fire to everything else. They're going to pack the Supreme Court with liberal Yahoo justices. They're going to rewrite the Constitution. They are going to make Puerto Rico and D.C. states, so that will give us 2 more Democratic senators, another Democratic House member. After that happens, the Republicans will never be able to win back the Senate ever again. And we'll be living in a liberal nut house if those things go through. Your Second Amendment's gone. Your First Amendment to practice your religion is gone. They're going to tear down churches because it's offensive to the gays and everybody else. Conservatives aren't going to be allowed to speak anymore. The First Amendment's only going to apply to libtards. So if we lose this election, I mean, I know this sounds over the top, but we're going to be in big trouble. A lot of our rights are going to go away. And I know people like to say it every election cycle, it's the most important election of our lifetime. This really is. In 2020, they had to run Joe Biden as a consensus candidate because the country wasn't there yet for a far-left candidate, and they're dealing with the Electoral College. But if he goes into a second term and he doesn't have to worry about being reelected, it's going to be left-wing anarchy in this country. So he has to be stopped at all costs. So what can you say? Can you speak on that a little bit?
Well, I obviously want to stop the Biden agenda. It's that the issue is, again, here is who's the best person to do that, because you can't just come out with an anti-Biden agenda. You also have to beat Biden in an election. And my issue is, again, if Trump is convicted and then that would ruin the chances of stopping the Biden agenda. The Ron DeSantis is the best alternative because, one, he not only has a conservative messaging, and because anyone can talk conservative, he has a proven track record of conservatism. He's a veteran of the military. Okay, there are tons of veterans who vote GOP. Overwhelmingly, veterans vote GOP. I like Ron DeSantis also because, unlike a lot of people like Vivek, for example, who's not even really Republican, he's never come out against the Iraq War. He was involved in fighting in Iraq. He served in Iraq, but he hasn't come out and attacked. Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is a veteran. I said that Vivek, who has personally come out against the Iraq War, Ron DeSantis hasn't.
Well, DeSantis should come out against the Iraq War.
No, he shouldn't. The Iraq War was a good thing, and
it was a terrible mistake.
No, it was not a terrible mistake. It stopped the world's #1 sponsor of terrorism from continuing to do that.
That sounds like some mainstream media talking points.
No, it's not. The mainstream media hates George Bush. They've spent years trying to destroy his legacy. No, they don't. They hate him.
Ever since Trump came in, George W. Bush is somehow now a saint. He never did anything wrong.
No, that's not true. Mehdi Hasan, who is part of MSNBC is when Bush started coming out and making
MSNBC were some of the biggest cheerleaders cheering on the war in Iraq back in the day.
No, they were not.
They definitely were.
Had all the Rachel Maddows, okay, and Rachel Maddow was talking about it, raging about it in bad ways all the time. But we're getting off track here. Ron DeSantis also brings in the Reagan conservatives. He brings out the traditional conservatives. He brings out conservative libertarians, and I don't like libertarians, but he brings out, and he also attracts a lot of independents. In his most recent re-election campaign in Florida, he won overwhelmingly, not just with Republican votes, but because he brought a ton of independents to the ballot box to vote for him. And so when it comes to 2024, if you want to stop the Biden agenda, and I want to stop it just as anyone else does, the best way to do that is to get Ron DeSantis as the nominee. Because he is the one who can do it. If Trump is convicted, I don't think that everything Trump did was bad. There are some good things he did. There's some bad things he did. I see some of Trump's policies as actually some things that we should continue. Some of them, at least, not all of them. But if you want to beat Biden, you're not going to do that, in my opinion, with a guy who, if he is a convicted felon, that will tank our chances. And so it's better to go with the person who is not going to get convicted of crimes and ruin the party's chances of winning in 2024 and stopping Biden. Because if you want to stop the socialists and the communists and the progressives, you've got to get the guy who is not going to be tainted with a conviction.
Well, I think I need to push back a little bit. So your big claim here is that Ron DeSantis is the most electable. But as it stands today, that's just simply not true. I mean, not only is Trump beating Biden by a bigger margin in the national numbers, he's beating Biden in the swing states, whereas Ron DeSantis is losing in some of these swing states. The race to the White House projection electoral college model has Trump winning 301 and DeSantis losing with, I mean, it's a narrow loss, but a loss is a loss, 268 electoral votes. DeSantis seems to be performing slightly better in the traditional Republican states that went blue, like Georgia and Arizona, but he's significantly underperforming Donald Trump's margins in the Rust Belt swing states, such as Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. So I don't know if I necessarily think that Trump is the weakest candidate. Trump did something that none of these other traditional conservatives were able to do, and that was to win the white working class in the Midwest, who are socially conservative but vote Democrat, reliably Democratic, over economic issues. And it was famously called the Blue Wall. Obama won these states easily. He won them twice, sometimes by double digits. And then just the next election cycle, Trump came in and was able to flip all three of those states on a economic populist message, being anti-free trade, criticize NAFTA. He's going to bring the jobs back. He's going to, increase your wages. The forgotten man will be forgotten no longer. All that stuff. And that really resonated. And then I was somebody who thought, that was probably a fluke. It was probably just like low turnout on the Democrat side. And I was worried going into 2020. I didn't think he was going to be able to win those states. And I was blown away by how close it was in Wisconsin. They had a poll the day before the election that Biden was going to win Wisconsin by 17 points. It was decided by 20,000 votes, less than 1%. Trump got more votes in Wisconsin than any other candidate ever before him. Hands down, the most Republican votes in the state of Wisconsin. And then you look at these polling matchups, and when it's Trump and Biden, Trump wins these Rust Belt states. But when the candidate is DeSantis or somebody else, Biden's winning these states. So, I mean, can we really say that Trump is the least electable candidate?
I think we can, because there are many polls that have shown that DeSantis beats Biden, doesn't lose to him. You are correct. There are some polls that show that Trump against Biden currently would beat him in a re-election, but those polls are going to change drastically in 2024 if he's convicted. If he is convicted of what he's accused of in these criminal trials, those polls are going to change overnight, and people are automatically going to change their vote and go for, if it's a Trump versus Biden matchup, they're going to go with Biden. Not because they like him, but just because, well, I don't want to elect the guy who literally just got convicted of a felony. So when it comes to these polls, they're going to change if Trump is convicted overnight, and they're going to swing the momentum in Joe Biden's direction just like that. And people have to understand that the Democrats want Trump to go against Biden. They want that.
But they wanted that in 2016
believe,
too, and look how that played out for him.
Well, no, I would say this, that in 2016 you're right, but they lost. They lost, but I wouldn't say that Trump was necessarily the one they wanted to go up against. That election they were more worried about who they would go up against rather than who they wanted. They didn't want to go up against Ben Carson, which is why they immediately went after him and killed his campaign before it really got going. But 2024 is different. They want to go up against Trump, because if they do, they will make it all about what happened on January 6th. They will all make it about what he said recently, and if he's convicted, they will make it about the fact that he's a felon. So this is something that we're playing into the Democrats' hands. They don't want to go up against Nikki Haley or up against Ron DeSantis. For one, Nikki Haley, if you believe the polls, beats Biden every time, and so they're afraid of her seriously, because she actually not only can bring out most Republicans to vote for her, she could bring a decent amount of independents. But even some Democrats have said that in a Haley versus Biden matchup, they'd vote for her. So that's what they're worried about too. They're also worried about Ron DeSantis because they know he's a winner. He's beaten their golden boys like Andrew Gillum in Florida. He's beaten again their prophesied messiahs like Charlie Crist, back in Florida, where he smashed them. And he's popular. He has a national appeal too. So not just with Republicans but with independents. So they're worried about that sort of matchup. I'm not interested in losing. I don't want to lose. This is why I don't want. That's why I don't want Trump to be the nominee. Because remember, the polls currently, as they stand, you're right, say that he would beat Joe Biden. I think anybody walking could probably beat Joe Biden. If he's convicted next year, those polls will immediately shift in the reverse.
All right, so there's a lot to unpack here. So I want to start first with the whole legal problems and stuff. So you are absolutely convinced that if he's convicted in one of these 4 cases, that's going to be the end of his campaign and it's over for him. But something I want to throw out there is, does anybody really think he's going to get a fair trial? I mean, I sure don't. These trials are being held in New York. They're being held in Washington, D.C., in Fulton County, Georgia, Atlanta. The 3 most left-wing places probably in the whole country. And they're going to pick randos off the street in those areas to come in and be the jurors. So, I mean, are you really going to tell me those juries aren't going to be biased? So I think we're going to have an uphill battle in these cases regardless, just because of where these jurisdictions are. Now, for us to get a fair trial here, we need to go to like West Virginia or Wyoming or Oklahoma, some more conservative areas of the country, and I feel like we'll get a fair trial. And then, so I don't necessarily totally believe that that's going to be the end of his campaign, because what I just said, I think a lot of people don't even believe in the justice system anymore, and I don't think that anyone truly believes he's going to get a fair trial. And then he can kind of use this to his advantage and say, well, look, see, I've been screwed by the system. They don't want me to be president because I'm looking out for you, and these elites are only worried about themselves. So I definitely think he could put that spin on it. And then, so now let's get into Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. So parts of this are true, parts aren't. So Nikki Haley is doing the best against Biden right now in the national polling. But the thing is, if she's the nominee, you're going to lose a lot of the Trump vote, people who came out to the polls to vote just for Donald Trump. They weren't necessarily Republicans before, but they were inspired by him and his campaign. They didn't vote for Bush. They didn't vote for McCain or Romney. They're what we call brick voters. They just want to throw a brick through the system. They don't necessarily care about other stuff. So that's a lot of people that we're going to be leaving out if Nikki Haley is the nominee. And not to mention she's corrupt. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Her husband's on the board of Boeing. She just wants war. It's a conflict of interest. And we've seen the Republican Party is fired up by populist candidates. They hate the establishment. So Nikki Haley might bring back into the fold some of the Bush conservatives, but I don't think that's enough to win. And I feel like you're going to be isolating more people than you are bringing in. And so here's my problem with DeSantis. Just from an electability standpoint, I obviously like him and I like his policies, but he signed that 6-week abortion ban in Florida. And I know me and you have disagreements on this, but a 6-week abortion ban is going to drag him down a lot. If he had signed something more moderate, like a 15-week ban or a 20-week ban, maybe it wouldn't be that big of an issue. But 6-week ban, the majority of the country doesn't agree with that. And we have a significant portion of the Democratic Party right now, specifically college kids, who vote in large for Democrats, who right now aren't going to show up on Election Day because they don't like Joe Biden. They're obviously not going to vote for Trump or any Republican because they have these radical left-wing beliefs, but they will stay home. They will vote for third party. They'll vote for Cornel West or somebody else. But if we have a candidate running on a federal 6-week abortion ban, they might show up and vote for Joe Biden in big numbers just on that issue alone. Trump is more moderate on the issue. He supports the exceptions. He supports letting states decide it. So they're not going to be able to hit him as hard on that issue. So, I mean, what do you think about that?
And in this race has dared to touch some of the third rails in American politics.
Saying because Trump is being prosecuted in New York, Washington D.C., Atlanta, he has no chance of a fair hearing whatsoever. That's just not true. There are juries who obviously go in there with their own biases, but that's why you have pretrial conferences and you have jury selection, because your lawyers are supposed to weed out people who may have those. So the idea that he cannot get a fair hearing, he literally has some of the best legal minds hired for him that the world's best money can buy defending him. And if he can't, with the best lawyers possible, with the best legal defense lawyers available to a person of his wealth and stature, not get convicted, then it's not because of biases. It has to be because he didn't make his case. Remember, he walks into there already with the presumption of innocence, because that's how the court system works. It says you are not guilty until proven so by the court. We have to prove your case. You don't have to prove anything. We have to be the ones that prove it. And so I disagree with that notion in itself. Also, Nikki Haley doesn't bring out the Trump votes. Look, people who are Republicans are going to vote Nikki Haley, even if they don't necessarily consider themselves liberal conservatives, because they don't want Biden. This idea that the BRIC voters, that we should care about them. Look, BRIC voters are the ones who gave us Clinton. And because they chose a Ross Perot over George Bush, and what Clinton did to this country was what he led to eventually the rise of Islamists who, by his apathy, which eventually caused 9/11, he led to the rise of China. He led to the rise of our economic strength, our economic vitality going abroad, which hurt the American working class. So I don't give a damn what BRIC voters think, because they're the ones who keep screwing this country over. Just because, when I throw a brick at the system, well, thanks a lot. Now you just broke the window, and now you didn't just break it, you shattered it. And this idea, she just wants wars, that's just totally nonsensical. Challenging terrorists and despotic authoritarians does not make a warmonger. It's the people who are the terrorists, like Al Qaeda, and and terrorist leaders like Xi Jinping of the CCP. Those are the warmongers. Defending yourself and defending the American way of life abroad against those people does not make you evil. Secondly, DeSantis on the 6-week abortion ban. And the idea, the college kids will come out. For one, the college kids are the least likely to vote. They're the ones who get up in the arms the most, but they're the ones less likely to actually show up and vote. I could care less what they think. And not just that, watering down conservative principles on abortion is going to have detrimental effects on conservatism. And not just that. Independent voters who might be opposed to a 6-week abortion ban, they are not going to then go and say at the polls, oh, well, I'm going to vote Joe Biden because DeSantis voted for a 6 weeks abortion ban. They're going to vote Ron DeSantis because they're like, I am sick and tired of not being able to pay bill for my groceries and make them affordable. I'm sick and tired of the fact that, I still don't have a job. I'm sick and tired of the fact that I see law disorder on my streets. That's what they're going to vote for. So I disagree with that, and I disagree with that idea that we should water down conservative principles on abortion for the sake of electability, because it's not, for one, it's just not true, and two, it's literally, that is literally a policy that is of the Democrats, not of the conservatives.
Okay, well, so I'm going to address the abortion thing and the Nikki Haley warmonger thing. So let's start with the abortion. So, again, we got into this last time, but I'm pro-life. But, so my question, and you don't have to answer this right now because I'm going to explain a bunch of stuff, but the basic question here is, so you're conservative and you want to protect life. So we're going to lose the election because we don't want to compromise on anything. But would you rather be a little bit more moderate and maybe not do 6 weeks, maybe 15 or 20, for the sake of winning an election against somebody who wants abortions up until birth? I can speak for myself, and I'm picking the consensus at 15 or 20 weeks for the sake of not getting the person who wants up until birth. So if we try to be as conservative as we possibly can and go with a 6-week ban and lose the election, you're not going to get a 6-week ban. You're not going to get 15, 20. You're going to get no ban. So I'm okay with compromising a little bit to bring the independents on our side, because the majority don't want late-term abortions. But we have to win the election. There isn't going to be any restrictions if we don't win the election. And you said that's your big thing, is we got to win. It's my thing too. We got to win the election. All these ideas are just ideas if we don't win elections. We've got to win the election. We've got to win next November, and we've got to win the Senate. We got to win the House, and we've got to get policies done. So this is what I would run on if I were one of these Republican candidates. So I would run and say, if I'm president, I'm going to pass a bill that restricts abortions in the third trimester, and you can't have late-term abortions. Anything else that you want to set limits on before that will be up to the states. So if Oklahoma wants to set a 15-week restriction, and if, Illinois wants to do 20 weeks, whatever, then that's up to the states. But for the federal government, we're going to restrict late-term abortions because that's wrong. No abortions in the third trimester. That's how I would settle that issue. I feel like that is enough to satisfy conservative, white, evangelical Christians to come out and vote. But at the same time, it's not going to have the independents flocking away from us in droves. So that's my take on it. It's settle for a more consensus position to avoid an even more evil situation. So now we turn to the issue of Nikki Haley, defense contractors, corruption, and warmongering. So, this isn't like some anti-military position. I'm in the military, okay? So I am all for a strong military. I'm all for standing up for America abroad. But we should not be the world's police. We should not be getting involved in conflicts that have nothing to do with us. And all we do is lose money and lives, because that does nothing for us. The Middle East is a lost cause completely. We should have been out of there a long time ago, and we have no reason to go back. I don't care what anybody says. The Middle East is a lost cause for the rest of time. There's no solving the problems over there. It's going to be chaos until this world is done turning. So we should not waste another cent or American life over in the Middle East, accomplishing nothing. But people like Nikki Haley and Dick Cheney and others don't care about that. They care about making their defense contractors rich, because those are the people who fund their campaigns. So let's just make up a random example. Let's say Weapons Incorporated is a defense contractor, and they make a super PAC for Nikki Haley, and they put hundreds of millions of dollars into it for her. Then she goes on to win the election. Obviously, they're expecting something in return. I mean, you don't just give somebody hundreds of millions of dollars and not expect something in return. And that return is going and starting conflicts and authorizing spending bills through Congress that puts all this money into these defense contractors to make the weapons, to do all this stuff. And then, so that's exactly what happened in the early 2000s. War was started. These defense contractors made millions. George W. Bush got money for his reelection. He went on to win, obviously. The media benefits second-handedly because they get the money for that the politicians spend on advertising on their networks with the campaign contributions from the defense contractors. So it's all one big shit show of us, the American people, getting screwed, and the politicians and the corporations getting rich. And it's just a lose-lose overall, and it's something that needs to be stopped. We should never, ever go to war for politicians and corporations to get rich and for our service members to die. That is just wrong, and it should. People like Nikki Haley should be nowhere near the Oval Office. So I'll hand it back over to you.
Especially
Okay,
when the people, I didn't interrupt you. Especially when the safety of the American populace is based off how strong our military is. The idea that we are not the world's police is wrong. America is the world's #1 superpower for a reason, and we should remain so. And if America does not act as the world's policeman, who is going to replace America on the world stage? You want the CCP to do that? Do you want the Ayatollahs to do that? Do you want the Kremlin to do that? Or would you rather America do that? America has an international responsibility, and it should not shirk that. The tragedy of war is that it does lead to lives, American lives, and money being spent. But those lives did not die for nothing. Americans who died in Iraq died to smash a despot who was literally supporting international terrorists across the world in order to do damage to America. That was a guy who literally tried to assassinate a former U.S. president. This is a guy who literally said that once the sanctions were gone, he was going to ramp up WMD manufacturing in order to get chemical weapons and get nuclear weapons. In fact, said after the Kuwait War that if I had only had nuclear weapons, the world wouldn't have stopped me. Secondly, the idea that the Middle East is a lost cause is just wrong. American influence in that region has created a better Middle East. Iraq today does not support terrorists across the globe. Saudi Arabia is now actively fighting terrorists in Yemen and fighting Islamist terrorists in their region because of American influence. If we had adopted an isolationist tone towards Saudi Arabia, they might have actually embraced the Wahhabists who we currently fight across the globe. And instead, the Saudi government, despite opposition from radical clerics in their country, has taken the position that it's within their interests and their interests, not just in national security, but in economics, to fight the Wahhabists in their region, not simply the Iranian proxies in Yemen. The fact that the media also loves war is absolutely ridiculous. The media,
it's great for ratings, and they love it.
I didn't interrupt you. The media apparatus with CNN and MSNBC spent all their time attacking George Bush for the war in Iraq, and even at parts tried to make jabs at Afghanistan at times, because they are about politics. They are about trying to essentially demonize and destroy conservative Republican candidates like George Bush Jr., who, might I also add, signed the Partial Birth Abortion Act and banned it. Rich people don't like war. You want to know why rich people don't like war? Because it hurts their interests. And they convince poor people or middle-class people to say, oh, war is bad, because they want to stay rich. Peace against bad dictators and despots is profitable. Look at China. The business class don't want war with China because they understand that all their money is made in China. They don't like paying insurance. They don't like paying healthcare. They don't like paid time off, and they don't like breaks. And it's great when you can outsource all your manufacturing to China where there is no such things as workers' rights, because it makes you rich. And rich people don't like the idea of war with people who they can make money off of. So this whole nonsense that it's about defense contractors and it's about media apparatus and it's about this is just total nonsense.
Well, when you first started talking, you had mentioned, like, if we were to go to war, would I want to be fighting with sticks and stones? I can tell you. Okay, so we both obviously know that Congress spends trillions with their defense spending, right? Like, we can agree on that? Hello?
Are you asking a question, or are you?
Yeah, no, I'm asking.
Your rhetoric.
Can we agree that Congress spends trillions on defense?
Congress spends lots in it, but it's not its biggest budgetary spending. Most of it's spent in Medicaid or Medicare.
Well, either way, they spend a crap ton on defense. And I can tell you, the average Joe enlisted guy like myself, who would be fighting on the front lines if we were deployed, who would be clearing these buildings with radical Islamic whatever, who were there to blow you up and die or whatever, we are not well equipped. We have our gear is junk. It is complete crap. From the 80s and 90s, it's ripped, it's fallen apart. We have guys in my unit with packs that are completely ripped right through the middle. We've got shit that doesn't even work half the time. So obviously, all of that money is not going to us. It's not going to make sure that we are well equipped. It's going to the people who are giving the money to the politicians. That's just the way it is. The defense contractors who have super PACs, who make the tanks and the guns and everything else, who are going to profit from it. That's where the money from the defense bills are going. Not to me, not to the guys, the grunts on the front lines, not to making sure that we have the gear that we need. It doesn't go to our paychecks. I mean, we should be getting paid way more than we do right now for the work that we do, but we don't make crap. I can promise you that. So we all deserve a raise. So I promise you that money is not being well spent, and there's not good intentions behind these spending bills. That's just how it is. And anyone who says otherwise is just not they don't want to see the truth.
Well, let me push back a little bit there. So you complain about dilapidated equipment, you complain about not necessarily having all the gear needed, and pay and stuff like that. Well, there are ways to resolve that. There are ways to fix that. If there is a complaint with you're saying, because I'm not going to assume. I assume you're being honest. I don't think you don't come across to me as a liar or dishonest person, even if I have disagreements with you politically. So I'm just going to assume that, I'm assuming just because I like you, that yes, that's the things that you're saying, you have issues with. I get it. Yeah, U.S. soldiers should be paid more than what they are being paid. That's not an issue of dispute. But that's not, however, your criticisms, a valid reason to then suggest that we should cut our military budget. Because if you're saying that you don't have enough equipment or the best equipment and the best quality, and that you don't get enough pay for the work you're doing, and that's a reason then for upping what we're spending in the military budget, not for lowering it. Because if you want better equipment, and if you want more equipment, and if you want better pay and more pay and better benefits, as you, a veteran or a soldier, deserves, in my opinion. For example, my company that I work for, whenever I have a veteran come in and I'm at the cashier because I work in retail. If there's a veteran who comes up to me and the policy of my company is if there's a clearance item, we do not give the extra discount, even if the person is a veteran, because we do give discounts to people who are veterans, but not to clearance items. But if there's a veteran who comes across and I'm cashiering that person out, I will override it and I will give them that extra discount because they deserve it. Especially if you've served in the military, you deserve that benefit, regardless of what people think, in my opinion. But those are reasons then you've just highlighted yourself why the budget should be higher and why we should be spending more. Because if we want to give you all the equipment you need and deserve, and if we want to give you the pay that you need and deserve, and if we want to make sure the money is better spent and more well spent, then that's a reason to up that budget, not to lower it. There are obviously debates on how we do that. For example, we definitely need to reform healthcare because the majority of federal spending is not military. It's actually in Medicare and Medicaid in entitlement programs. So I push back you with you because you deserve all those things, and the way you do that is by spending more on the military budget, not decreasing it.
Well, I mean, our defense spending we spend more on defense than any other country in the world. The number is so high, it's unbelievable. So I don't think it needs to be cut or raised. I think if you just reallocate the funds to what they actually need to be going to, we would be just fine. So I'm going to give you more specific examples because this is a real problem, and I think our government needs to address it. So I'm part of an infantry company so we're going to be the ones, fighting the fight. I'm not like an admin or logistics or anything like that. So if we had to go into battle, my specific job is I would have to deploy mortars. For a mortar system, you have the cannon, you have bipods, and you have a base plate. And I know it doesn't probably seem like it's that big of a deal, but there are a lot of moving parts on all of these things, and in order to shoot it properly and to get the mortars on target, you need working equipment. There's a whole site that goes with it and everything, and we have one working weapon system in our company. You're supposed to have at a minimum of 3. Our higher ups within our company say there's no money to fix the broken ones, and there's no money to buy new ones. So if we were to get called up tomorrow, we'd be going with one weapon system. And keep in mind, it's falling apart. It's a piece of crap. I guess you can say it works, it functions, but it's old, it's crappy, and we could have much better equipment. So money definitely needs to be spent in better, smarter ways than where it's being spent right now. And then you mentioned entitlements, and yeah, I think we do need to have entitlement reform in this country. And that starts with Social Security. I think we need to raise the retirement age. I know that's not a popular thing to say, but people are living longer, and when Social Security was first designed, it wasn't designed with a life expectancy of 78 or 81, wherever it is now. Life expectancy in the 30s, when this was created, was, I think, in the low 60s. So it was only ever meant to support somebody for a couple of years. So obviously the money is running out. So we do need to raise the retirement age, and I wouldn't support raising it for people like my parents' age or people who are just about to retire. We would need to raise it for people our age, people who are young and who have time to adjust to the circumstances. If I can't adjust to retiring a couple years later, right now at the age of 24, then I've got bigger problems than the Social Security check, to be quite honest. Social Security is not supposed to be your sole income. It's supposed to be a safety net to keep you out of poverty. There is still some individual responsibility here. The individual does need to have a 401k or some kind of retirement plan and needs to be saving accordingly throughout your life. You can't just completely rely on Social Security. Another thing we need to do is means testing. People who don't need the check should not be getting it. People like Mark Zuckerberg or Warren Buffett, obviously they are so rich they couldn't spend all their money if they tried. They obviously don't need the Social Security check. And that would save us a lot of money right there. So I think it's definitely a conversation we need to have. And you're right that a lot of money is spent on these entitlements, but a lot of it is spent on defense. I don't have exact numbers, but it's in the trillions.
So you mentioned that we have the number one defense spending of the world. Well, there's a reason for that, because we are the world's number one superpower, and we should remain so. If we stop spending less, and you made the argument, well, we shouldn't spend less, we shouldn't spend more, we should. The fact of the matter is that a lot of the people that are on your side want to reduce the defense spending, and if we did that, and then that gives the opportunity for our enemies, like the CCP, which is the second highest military spender in the world, to then replace the United States as the world's number one superpower. And I can't think of anything more not anti-American first than to see us replaced by a communist despotic dictator in Xi Jinping. And you complain about working equipment that needs to be fixed or needs to be replaced. Obviously, we can support on getting that fixed, but it does not get fixed or improved by cutting the spending, or by reducing the spending, or by keeping it where it's at. That's an argument to increase it. There's obviously ways we can make it more accountable, but my argument is this: increase the spending so we can give more of our troops like yourself or a veteran, the equipment that they need, modern day equipment that's working, and then also so we can ensure that you give all the protections and benefits that you deserve. And also, I agree with you somewhat on the Social Security issue, but I don't think that I'm not sure if raising the retirement age is the answer. Maybe it is. I've only given this area of the debate some thought. My idea is that for people who are 40 and above, especially for independents, they don't want to lose their Social Security. I would give the option where if you're 40 and older, you can keep your Social Security. If you're 30 to 39 currently, you can either keep yourself on Social Security, or you can get a lump sum of what you've paid, meaning you get all the money you paid into Social Security back. And then for those who are 18 to 29, they just get a lump sum of what they put into Social Security. I think a moderate bipartisan solution that could work. I don't necessarily have the answer to that question you've talked about, but you are right. And I guess this is something that we agree on. Yes, the entitlements are too much. But the way in which we help our military is by increasing the defense spending. So that way you can get the equipment that you need and get the broken equipment either fixed or discarded of. And the entitlement programs like Medicare and Medicaid is where most of our money is going of, not in the military spending. And we need to make sure that our spending, whether it's military, entitlements, or whatever, is spent properly and effectively.
Well, I mean, yeah, we can agree to disagree on the defense spending, and you have some interesting ideas on Social Security. So when you say, people 30 to 39 or under 30 would just get a lump sum, are you suggesting that they're just giving back the money that they paid in, and then that's the end of it? They're on their own for their retirement, or what are you getting at with that?
What I'm saying is that, people under 30 would just get the lump sum of what they paid into Social Security. So anything that they paid into Social Security, government essentially sends them a check, says, here's what you paid into it, this is your money, but you're not going to be on it because we have to rein in our entitlement programs.
Oh, so you're suggesting ending Social Security, not reforming it?
I'm suggesting that for people who are 18 to 29, like I said, I don't know what the full solution is. I'm Like, there are people who want to end it. There are people who want to reform it. There are people who want to keep it the way it is. I'm simply saying that this might be one of the ways to fix it. I don't have all the answers to it. But this is an option to be considered among the many options.
All right. Well, I mean, do we have anything else here?
No, not unless you want to address comments people made in the chat. If there's something that you want to ask me or bring up.
Well, so I want to talk about, I mean, we can do comments if you want, but I wanted to, before we get out of here, I want to talk about where we go from here. So, what do you think the chances are that we're going to have another debate before the Iowa caucus?
Well, they did say it was the last debate
of the year.
I'm sure that you know, for the next debate, you know, who can say, you know, everything could change in a month. But if there's a fifth debate in, you know, next year, I'll definitely be tuning in, and if you invite me, I'll definitely tune in with you and give you my thoughts.
All right, yeah, so that'd be great if you want to come on. I'm always happy to have you on. I reached out to somebody I know in my personal life who's very left wing, and he likes to engage in debates and stuff. I tried to get him to come on, and then we could have him debate with us, but he never got back to me. But I guess another question I want to pose to you on this subject is, let's say we go through the Iowa caucus, and Chris Christie doesn't do well, and he doesn't get the result that he's hoping for in New Hampshire. And let's say we have another debate in between New Hampshire and South Carolina, and after the New Hampshire primary, Chris Christie drops out. We're left with Trump, Haley, DeSantis, and Vivek, or maybe just Trump, DeSantis, and Haley, and the RNC schedules another debate. Do you think Trump would show up to that debate with the fact that Chris Christie would be out of the race?
He hasn't shown up for the last four, so I highly doubt he'll show up for the fifth. If he does, I would be surprised. I think you and I can probably agree that Chris Christie inadvertently may have tanked his campaign now, and yeah, this is the moment where he really needed to continue his building momentum. I think that's going to shrink right now, and he probably won't make the fifth debate if there is one next year. So it'll come down to DeSantis, Haley, Vivek, but I think Vivek might not even be there potentially in the fifth debate. He definitely has a strong amount of people backing him, but as we get closer to that Iowa caucus, those people who are in Vivek's camp are going to have to make a choice, and a lot of them are really big on Trump, so they might undermine his campaign inadvertently. But I don't see Trump showing up. I don't see Trump showing up for the fifth one. I would be surprised if he did.
Yeah, so I remember when we were approaching the first debate, and Trump hadn't made up his mind, and he was kind of wish-washy, and he said he might go, and then he said he wasn't going to go. My thinking is that, because I know there was in 2016, we had a debate after the New Hampshire primary, so I assume we're going to do something similar. So my thinking is we're going to roll through New Hampshire, and that's where Christie's putting all his money on, and I have a feeling he's not going to do as well as he thinks he's going to, and that'll be the end of his campaign. He'll drop out, and we'll be left with 3 or 4, probably just DeSantis, Haley, and Trump. And my thinking is, in Trump's mind, he'll probably think to himself, well, Christie's gone, and he's the only one that is actually going to, go after me, and I'll be able to just, tear apart DeSantis and Haley. I might as well go. But I could also see him thinking, well, I mean, I didn't lose anything from not going to the other debates, so why bother? Why subject myself to attacks? So I think it's not likely, but it's definitely just an idea. But yeah, Iowa caucus, January 15th. I do live coverage of elections, so I don't know if you want to join me for that. I'd love to have you on. What do you think?
I'm totally down for a discussion. Like I said before, you and I have disagreements, but I like you. So,
Yeah, I enjoy our commentary, and it's always nice having somebody on. So, uh, unless you have anything else, or unless you want to read some of these comments and respond to them, I mean, I don't really have anything else left here.
no, I'm good for tonight. Thank you for bringing me on. I do appreciate it. So, everyone, if you want to check out my content, you can do so. I post there, but so it's going to be at NeoconNet7. So you can look me up there.
All right, sounds good. So thanks for coming on, and thanks for everybody who's still with us, who watched the whole stream. We really appreciate you guys watching. And just be looking out for the next couple of days. I'm going to be doing my updated prediction, my primary prediction video with this debate out of the way. And like I said, we're going to be covering the Iowa caucus,